Good. How you doing, Mike?
Doing well.
How's your hand? Is that time to start the meeting?
Are we having a circus?
Oh.
Is that from yours? You're trying to keep us on our toes or something? I was gonna say, if that's the DARSAR opening thing, that's gonna be,
That ought to go quickly, I hope.
I would think so, yeah. You just want to non. I mean, that's
Already been through the HRDB, right?
Yeah, I saw that, so.
Yeah, we can.
I'm sure. Hey, how are you? Good, thanks. Nice to see you.
Hey, how we doing?
Good to see you. Don't know we're missing.
I haven't.
Hey, just beach up here this morning. Nice to be back under the bright light. Here he is.
So,
That camera.
yes.
Oh,
Oh, here he is.
Gotcha, I got you.
He's here.
would you, find me into the internet? He's here. He said just 1 second.
Good. Okay, I'm going to call this City Council Capital Projects Workshop of August 20th, 2024 to order. With that, I'm going to mention that we need to welcome, or I want to welcome everybody here in person and those who are joining us online. These work sessions are an opportunity for council to receive information and to discuss issues that are affecting the city. We do not vote in these work sessions at all. Public comment is welcome, but that's after council's had a chance to discuss these issues. So with that, I'm going to go to the first discussion item on the agenda, and that's the Sons and Daughters of the American Revolution Memorial Bench Placement in Henry C. Chambers Park. And Linda Roper, our Downtown Operations Manager, is going to lead us in that discussion.
Good.
Is that on? There, that one's on, sorry. So the sons and of the Revolution and the Daughters of the Revolution chapters that are here in Beaufort, there's the Sons of Revolution, was this the governor's, Hamilton's chapter, and the Daughters of Revolution, I don't know why I can't say it today. Can't get that B out. It is the Thomas Hayward Jr.'s chapter. I have Randy Atkins here and Diane Brownfield also. So I'm just going to run through. They have purchased, both of these chapters have purchased some benches. And they want to place them in the waterfront park. They came to us and we have worked with Public Works and just trying to find a location for these two benches. We already have a Thomas Hayward bust at the west end of the park. And we felt like the most fitting place for this is at the entrance to the contemplative garden. And it's the walkway at the west, and they would flank each side of that walkway facing each other. We have, this is what the benches look like. If you, there are, and there's a mock-up of the Sons of the Revolution and then the Daughters of the Revolution. So there will have two of them on each side, one on each side. This kind of gives you the west entry that I was talking about. This walkway on each side of that walkway to the contemplative garden, we'd remove some of the landscaping and then replace it with some other landscaping, so it's a little bit around each bench behind them. And actually, the landscaping looks a whole lot different. This is only a few months ago, so it's kind of interesting. And this is just another, this is the exit, as you exit, kind of what you would see, or you would see the benches on each side. And just to kind of give you another idea, there's the bust. This has gone through the HRB. HRB approved the placement of the locations. And we feel that this could enhance that area of the memorials that are already there. I don't know if you want to speak with Randy or Diane.
And either one of y'all want to come up and say something, or?
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate the opportunity to address you and for you to consider putting our 250th anniversary benches in a very appropriate location near the bust of Thomas Hayward Jr. in the walkway toward the contemplative park. Hard to say. The bench program is actually a statewide South Carolina Sons of the American Revolution campaign to place benches in strategic locations around the state to honor the 250th anniversary of our independence from England. It's a very small granite bench that is kind of low profile, but makes a big statement. The Daughters of the American Revolution thought it was a great idea too, and have partnered with us in making this kind of a mirror image situation on each side of the walkway. So it's kind of a shaded area. It's a good place for people to sit down and contemplate what those monuments mean. 250 years of independence as our country approaches that momentous holiday or momentous date. So appreciate your consideration. We think it's a great location. We think it's a great addition to Waterfront Park, and we hope you will approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane, you wish to say anything? Can you come up to the microphone?
We didn't just copy the Sons of the American Revolution. We also wanted to join the Sons of the American Revolution with the bench idea, but we also, the Daughters of the American Revolution, have a very big plan to join in with the 250th celebration for the democracy of the United States for this year. So thank you very much, and I hope you will be in a very positive regard for this project. And I thank you very much. Linda Roper has been very cooperative and very helpful for us this year. And I thank you all for that.
Thank you. I think this is a wonderful idea, but if I'm not mistaken, we cannot vote on that in this meeting, but we receive it as information. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. This is just to seek your concurrence. There is not a need for a formal approval.
Okay,
But as the corporate body and the body who makes decisions for ownership of the city, I thought it was appropriate for you to consider this.
okay, thank you.
I've got
Anyone
a
else?
question.
Sure.
The benches, they are all one piece?
Yeah, they're gonna be set by the memorial,
Deadly
Steedley,
monument.
but they're gonna
Okay.
set, so they're not just one piece.
Okay, but
From what I understand.
they're
but I
not
mean,
movable. That's why I'm worried about vandalism or something like that. Somebody
Don't
coming
think-
over and tipping them.
We don't think so.
Okay. That was my only concern, but no, I do like the idea of it very much.
But I think they're going to, I think they're not gonna be able to come apart.
Okay,
And we're going to set them, on a piece of concrete. And so
okay.
we're gonna do the best we can. How about that?
No, if you do it on the concrete, I understand, from another thing that y'all did with it, the bench, and yeah, I think it'll be good.
Our public works are master installers.
Yes, they are.
They're
can
master
attest
of
to
many
that.
things, and they can do this and do it right.
I can
Will
attest
it
to
be
that.
connected to the slab that it'll be on in some way? Nate, do you know? I'm just thinking if somebody tried to flip it over and break.
That's what I was worried.
So in the design, we actually talked a little bit with Steedley, and it does have a hefty weight to it. And they are mounting it to the concrete, which is why we didn't go with pavers. We're actually going to pour a concrete pad and try to do a stamp kit on top to where it looks like pavers, but it's still a concrete pad.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thanks.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay, well, thank you for that, and I guess
Great idea.
we don't have to do anything formally, so, we look forward to seeing it and
Yes.
having the, I guess, ribbon cutting or whatever we're gonna have on that, so. Look forward to it. Okay, moving down the agenda, next on the agenda is the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA, obligation deadline and financial update. We have our finance director, Alan Eisenman.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I just want to kind of give council updates on ARPA, just kind of where we are. We do have a upcoming deadline from the Treasury, so I want to kind of brief council on that. But we'll begin first with just a background of ARPA. As most may know, this is from the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. They authorize these ARPA funds of about $350 billion to state and local governments across the country. Treasury released an interim rule on August 10th, 2023. And under this program, recipients must obligate all award funds by December 31st, 2024, and expend funds by December 31st, 2026. Those two deadlines
Mayor.
are important.
Excuse me, they can't hear you in the back.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll try to speak up a little better in the mic. So yeah, with those two deadlines, we have December 31st, what they may be obligated by, and then expended by December 31st, 2026. And we'll begin with the ARPA revenue. The city received a little over $6.6 million from Treasury in two payments, both in September of 2021 and September of 2022. The city also received $1 million of ARPA funds from Beaufort County in June 2022 and April 2023 for cybersecurity and the Good Neighbor program. And then finally, with ARPA funds, you're able to earn interest on these funds. So we've earned a little over $480,000 in interest as of June 30th of 2024. A lot of those have been in CDs and other investments with the state as well. And with the rising interest rates, those have been doing pretty well. Here is Treasury's obligation definitions and deadlines. So Treasury defines obligation as an order placed for property and services and entering into contracts, subawards, and similar transactions that require payment. An obligation is not an adopted budget or a budget amendment. So under this program, recipients must obligate all award funds by December 31st, 2024 and expend by December 31st, 2026. And recipients are required to return to Treasury any funds that have not been obligated by the obligation deadline of December 31st, 2024. So I'll be here before you know it, for sure. And here's just a high level of our ARPA financial updates as of June 2024. We mentioned the total revenues between the federal government and from Beaufort County, and interest has been 8.1 million. We've expended about 3.2 million. So that leaves a net change of fund balance of about 4.9 million. Now, as far as the obligations go, we have projects with current city obligations that have a contract or PO associated with it, a little over $2 million. And we also have budgeted for fiscal 25 projects without current year obligations, a little over $2 million as well. And a lot of these projects are in the bidding process, and we are hoping to get contracts in place by December 31st for a lot of these projects. That leaves a remaining ARPA fund balance, if you may, about a little over $813,000. And we want to kind of recommend a path forward to make sure we meet our obligation deadline. So for our fiscal 25 ARPA budget projects without current city obligations, we need to make sure that these projects have a contract or order placed for property or services, also known as a purchase order, by December 31st, 2024. We also need to make sure we identify our remaining funds, about $813,000, and ensure they are appropriately obligated by our December 2024 deadline. And also it's kind of obvious, but the city does not want to have to return any unobligated ARPA funds back to the treasury. We want to make sure that we have obligated these funds and spent these funds within those two deadlines. And I have included kind of a further breakdown in your agenda packet with revenues and expenses, kind of highlighting the projects we have done so far for a further breakdown, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that council may have about the ARPA funds and about this upcoming obligation deadline.
Yeah, hey, could you explain to me as simply as you can so I can understand it? This on the FY Title City ARPA financial update as of 6/30/24. The fifth bullet, FY 25 budget projects without current city obligations. So we have the projects, but explain. I don't quite understand
That's
that.
right. Yeah, good question. So we have these projects budgeted in fiscal 25, but there's not a contract or a purchase order in place. So we'll take that first line item, that Pigeon Point playground equipment. We budgeted $300,000. As of right now, we have not issued a purchase order or a contract to purchase that equipment. So right now, that's, according to Treasury, that's shown as unobligated. So these are the kind of that section. There's ones we need to make sure we work on to get these projects, so we have contracts in place by December of this year.
I see. Okay.
That helps.
And
Good question.
were you finished with your?
Yeah, I was going.
I've been kind of playing in my mind with this ARPA fund remaining balance of 813,000 that's left. And I'm trying to, do we have any idea yet what we're going to do with that?
Not specifically, yeah. As we know, a lot of the capital projects are, a lot of them coming higher than what we budgeted for. So we probably want to leave a little bit of room for that. But as of right now, we don't have anything budgeted for this remaining balance.
Are you looking to us for guidance on that?
Yeah, just kind of a little direction, just to have an idea. We can put that into a budget amendment in future meeting, but just want to kind of get.
I've got some ideas for that extra money. And this is just me personally, and I'm gonna let everybody else on council chime in. But I want to get those projects that are already pretty much shovel ready, in a sense that, you know, they're going through design and they'd be pretty simple projects to complete. But I'd like to see at least 150,000 of that money maybe go towards the neighborhood revitalization program to make that 200,000. And the reason for that is that's kind of mirrors what they did in Bluffton with their neighborhood revitalization program. And it gives us 2 years to expend that money. And I know the owners of those properties that have been identified over there have not been notified. Whether they take advantage of this or not, we don't know, but that'd be good seed money to work with some other partners in trying to get something done in that area. I'd also like to see, the Duke Street project's been sitting out there for a long time. It's in design stages now. I'd like to see, since there was a meeting held and everybody seems to favor phase A and B, which is roughly $600,000 in estimated construction costs. I'd like to see that 600,000 go to that because that's a project that's been out there waiting for a while. And any money left over, and I think there'd be $50,000 or $63,000 left over, could either go towards Battery Shores construction, because I noticed that there's an estimated cost of 140,000, but it may end up costing more than that. And apply that towards that, because that's another drainage project that I think is low-hanging fruit that could be taken care of, and get those off of our CIP. And if not that, then maybe put some money towards something else, maybe waterfront park engineering or something like that. So that's me, and I'll let anybody else chime in on some thoughts on the money.
I too would like to see money going towards the neighborhood revitalization program. 150 sounds reasonable, maybe 200. A lot of the smaller projects such as police radios, improvements to the fire station, Battery Shores, that's definitely something we need to get done. I'd leave it to staff for the rest of it, but a lot of these smaller projects like that, that would benefit the entire city. I think they would be good. And, what do you think?
I'm curious.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Josh. I've spoken once.
I'll go after you.
So I'm just curious, did staff have any idea of what this money might be used for, Scott?
Yes, Councilman, thank you for asking. We do have a lot of infrastructure needs right now, some of which are not defined in the immediate moment, but will be defined soon, such as the waterfront park. We have an RFP out for consulting services. For that, we do not know how much that consultant is going to cost us right now, but that is something definitely we could use these ARPA funds for. We also have needs. We have some road paving needs, such as Battery Shores. We could use this ARPA funds for, and we have the drainage projects that are emerging out there in that area of the city as well. So there are a lot of infrastructure needs and public projects that have to do with public safety that I would rather see these funds spent on. We certainly need to develop a robust neighborhood assistance, neighborhood revitalization program. There are other funds that we can tap into for that. We can work with the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust, who has access to approximately up to $20 million bank that the state has, and we can work with them and putting together our neighborhood assistance program and still kick in some funds from our coffers as well. But we have a lot of infrastructure needs that we have not programmed for that have been emerging that we can use these ARPA funds for.
Is there, I'll hold that comment for now. Yeah. Go ahead, Josh.
Okay, so most of what I had written down actually is in alignment with some of what's been said. On April 30th, the last time we had this discussion, in regards to the ARPA funds, I was in favor of $100,000 to the neighborhood revitalization plan, and I do still stand by that. So if it seems like the consensus is to add some money to that pot, that would be my thought is 100,000, and then that would bring it to 150. I think that with the report we got back from Duke Street, it does make sense to move forward with funding at least phase A of that, which is the 300,000. And then did we have a funding plan? I think in this report, it showed that we were in the progress of finding one, but did we have a funding plan for the Arsenal wall repairs? Or would this be good use for those funds? I think that was $30,000. So I had it written down with a question mark because I didn't know if we had something else in the works.
Yeah, you talking about just for the study or for?
No, for the repair work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're waiting on probably some grant opportunities on that. But
Okay.
Most of that would require a local match, so we could use some ARPA funds
Okay.
for that.
And then the other, I didn't put a dollar amount next to these. If we have the opportunity, I would like to increase the funding for the 2 Explorer programs that we kicked off this year. So that would be the Future Guardians and the Sparking Embers. Those seem to have a pretty good turnout this year, and I think there's opportunity to continue to grow those programs. And then I know I see that we have the security camera upgrades, 55,000, but I just wonder if there's the opportunity to maybe add more to the security cameras measure. And I think that kind of goes back to what you were just mentioning, Scott. But I could definitely support adding some to that pot of money. And then I know that we had in here that the parallel road was postponed. But if there was support, I'd like to better understand the opportunity from Neal Road to Depot or North. So that's the additional section that was talked about in the long-range transportation plan. Don't know how much that project would cost today, but if we had the opportunity to move forward with some kind of a study to determine what that would look like and what the cost would be, we'd be in better position should the transportation referendum pass and we have $10 million to work on it, or if money's reallocated from the rebought road to something else. And that's all I have written down. So mostly in alignment.
From a technical standpoint, can we put money on ARPA funds into like a revolving fund or a fund that could potentially not be identified as specific project by December 31st? So if we put it in revitalized for the revitalized neighborhood program, but we haven't identified project repairs, does that qualify still?
I would have to take a look at the rules and get with our attorney
it
to see,
sounds
but I
like-
don't think that, just based on my understanding of how the ARPA rules work, I think you have to obligate them against a
Right.
specific project
That's
or
what I thought.
contract, not toward a program.
I mean, as much as I agree that that's a great location for it, unless we've got the list of $200,000 worth of repairs that can be committed to by December 31st of 2024, we could potentially lose anything we put in that fund and don't have spent or earmarked, if I understand it right.
That's a good-
Allocated.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
of
I
course.
wonder then if the opportunity exists for us to find another project that we have funded, but could fund with ARPA money and then put wherever that project is that we fund with ARPA, take
Right.
the money for that and put it towards the
Utilize for
program and
the
have more of
programs
an
there.
extension
Yeah.
on our
I
time.
think there are opportunities there. It's just that I think as I was reading over the specs regarding ARPA and the funds, they make it pretty specific that you've got to have contractual commitments to the money by that date. And I was thinking in a revolving fund like that, we
Right.
would likely not have that in all 200,000.
Well, hopefully, maybe we can use it for the waterfront park to get
Let
stuff
me-
I'll be
started
careful
for there.
about that too, because we're not going to have, we will not have contractable amounts other than consultants before December 31st of
Well,
24.
we can use it for the consultants.
Yeah, no, for the consultants, absolutely. Yeah.
One more question. So this may resolve itself, especially being that I saw in here, maybe we get to it, but the Port Republic and Craven Street was initially supposed to cost 7.5 million. Now, a year later, 2 years later, the estimated cost is supposed to be 15 million. So I'll set my feelings on that aside for the moment. But the question is, if like the projects with current city obligations, so King Street Drainage Project, right? It looks like we put 10% down. I don't know if that's the match required or what that was, but if we have 10% in there, 1.1 million, and that project is downsized and the cost of it becomes 5 million or say whatever, then this percentage goes down, correct? So then that would be additional funds that we have back in this ARPA pool of money. Now, with the understanding that other projects are probably going to cost more, I'm sure that we would need it and it would basically just move around and it would increase, or pay for the higher percentage on some of these projects that are underfunded. But is that a correct statement to say that these percentages will be reduced potentially, and so we would have additional funding back to this pool,
Yeah,
right?
more ARPA funds available for if this King Street engineer
That's all.
doesn't come
That-
to the full amount, then.
Okay.
That's all assuming that we'll be allowed to move that money from what it's dedicated for now, right? I mean, we don't
We
know
have to
that
make
yet.
sure we move that by December 31st.
But I guess, my question is that, let's say the King Street project, because whatever we decide to do with it finally, it looks like we'll be doing less than we'd planned to do. Do we know whether that money that we may not, that have been dedicated to the King Street project could be used for something else?
Yeah, we can use it for another project as long as we do it by December 31st.
Has that been approved by SCORE? Because I think you got to get permission to do.
Y'all are jumping into my deep dive.
Ah.
already. We're
Sorry.
gonna discuss that and some of the options, but tentatively, yes, SCORE and RIA have spoken with us. And they believe they have an approach they would like to take if we choose to reallocate funding.
Can you tell we've been gone for a few weeks? We're all like jumpy, we want more information.
They did not recognize the storm delay. They were moving ahead with our meetings in the middle of it, so I don't know that the state's gonna let us go that route.
Okay, anything else from council? Okay,
It's
with
not
that,
on this, but you're gonna get into your deep dive obviously next, right? So, okay, carry questions
so-
over there. Yeah, it's,
I think we have enough information, so we'll try and craft this as a part of a budget amendment for fiscal year 25. Just some of your points that you guys have mentioned, we can probably kind of next step forward to make sure we have it budgeted.
and did
Mayor
did
and
we
council,
wanna
that-
iron
that-
out, did we want to further iron out like any specific numbers that we wanted to provide for guidance or?
how would y'all like to proceed on that?
Likely to change a lot.
Well, Mayor and council, the purpose of this discussion is to get some direction from you
Okay,
in terms of the type of expenditures you would like to see the ARPA funds expended on.
Okay.
We have no shortage of needs to spend these dollars on. I don't think we'll be giving any of them back. If I turn to Nate Farrell right now, he could probably give me over $1 million in projects that we could spend this money on that are definitely needed in the city of Beaufort. So we just need to get an idea of where your head is with this, and then we'll bring it back to you in a budget amendment with a formal request.
well, it was, since we have a deadline, my feeling is if we can get the low hanging fruit, in other words, we're shovel ready or close to that or whatever, and can get it done by the end of the year, at least contracts for that. Let's move with whatever the infrastructure projects we've got and kind of get those off of our plate so we can focus on some, other bigger things, on one being the waterfront park. So-
I have a general comment. The importance of the neighborhood revitalization program. I've been better educated now, especially with the comment that Mike just made. But as a general comment, I just, and I understand the restrictions of using ARPA fund, but I just like to fire a shot across the bow to let everyone know that that revitalization program is important. So we should be looking for ways that we can raise money without running afoul of any guidance or regulation ordinances. So
And Mitch, that's going to be through partnerships. There's a lot of people that can step up to the plate.
One more thing, Scott. I've talked to a lot of people, and I know we've had this conversation before. Do we already have a way to fund having police officers downtown on a regular basis? Because if we don't, maybe the opportunity exists for us to absorb the cost of having just more of a presence downtown through this as well. But I don't know if you guys had gotten any farther with working that piece out.
Yeah, the chief and I have discussed downtown patrols, and I do believe they are increasing. Also indicated a desire for foot patrols downtown. I am hesitant to recommend spending this one-time pot of money on any recurring costs, and that would be a recurring cost. And so I want to be careful of that. It needs to be a one-time cost. If we sink this into a program that we know we're going to have to pay for year after year after year, and we don't have recurring funds to do it, then we're saddling the taxpayers with the bill that they may not be able to afford.
Understood.
Anything else from anybody? Thank you, Alan.
I appreciate it.
Hope you got a little bit of direction there. Okay. All right, next on the agenda is capital improvement program, our quarterly report. And, JJ? You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening and welcome everyone to our first quarterly capital improvements workshop. There's a lot of information in this packet, and I recognize that. We're going to move through it as thoroughly as we can here. I hope as we talk through this and we adopt some of these new processes that we've talked about in the past months, that even though it's a lot of information, it will be easily understood for everybody and a little more transparent and accessible to everyone on the public side and for council. So I'd like to begin by thanking the capital projects team, those that are here with us now and those that came before me. Our project support coordinator, Carrie Gorsuch, isn't able to be here with us tonight. She's on a much needed vacation this week. Neil Puglisi was a city representative that handled a lot of projects for the city. He had to step away from city projects earlier this year. And then our current team, Nate Farrow, our Public Works Director, Linda Roper, Downtown Development, Alan Eisman, our Finance Director, Sandra Rice, and Jay Phillips in our Finance Department have been taking on the procurement and purchasing role for about 6 months now, on top of their regular duties. And then Kurt Freeze, our Community Development Director. They've done an amazing job getting all of this together and moving us forward and getting us here to where we are today. And they deserve to be recognized. It's been a lot of hard work, and I wouldn't be here in front of you tonight if it weren't for this team. So moving into the overview and activity updates for the capital improvements program, I have a discussion agenda that's up on the screen now. Mr. Mayor, if it's okay with you, my recommendation would be that as we move through, as we get done with sections A and B, and then after that, each section, as we engage and answer any questions for council at that point, would be the appropriate time to bring the public in for public comment on those items.
All right.
Oh, that's a sensitive mouse. I just introduced our capital improvements team. We started meeting in February of this year regularly on weekly meetings. We try to focus those on action-based items, what was done the previous week, what needs to be done the next week. We're building out these processes and these checklists from these meetings, making sure that moving forward, nothing slips through the cracks and that we're able to provide detailed information to both council and the public. Any major substantive issues, we schedule a breakout meeting with the appropriate parties so that we don't have everyone involved, but it keeps everyone in the know, keeps us communicating internally to make sure that we don't have any issues. Planning knows what's going on. We know what's going on in planning. Alan doesn't all of a sudden get a bill for a large amount of money that he wasn't expecting. Linda, this one hasn't actually worked out that great, but Linda doesn't have construction going on in downtown that she didn't know about. We've worked out, I think, most of those kinks moving forward. Since February, we've been conducting an ongoing assessment of our internal processes, trying to adopt industry best practices and legal requirements. We recognize that there has been a past lack of consistency in processes and procedures. We have developed an internal project management standard operating procedure to ensure that everyone's roles, responsibilities, and expectations within the capital projects program are understood and clear. We are migrating all of our documents and records to a single records management system. We're still transitioning to that. That is the SharePoint system. It's part of our Office 365 subscription, so it's at no additional cost to the city, and it makes for more efficient information sharing. We adopted in late January, early February, we started working on a new project management system. It's called Airtable. It's what we use for our strategic planning sessions. We're going to demonstrate that here in just a little bit for everybody, but a single project management system where all information can be shared and communicated, projects can be tracked, timelines can be created, we can create critical paths, and begin to adopt actual industry project management standards. We've been exploring full usage of projects module in our current financial management system. We're getting all that information plugged in. One thing we've run into is it's incredibly difficult to get local government vendors to communicate or their systems to communicate. So we've been having to work through that, but I think we're making some major progress. We've integrated our project management system with our geographic information system, which we'll demonstrate for you here shortly. We are currently updating our purchasing and procurement policies, and then in conjunction with that, we'll also be bringing forward ordinance updates on that to be more clear. And that's part of a comprehensive fiscal controls assessment that the entire finance department is working through right now. We hope to complete that before the end of this year. We developed a project initiation form process. I shared that with council earlier today, and I'll talk about that more as we get down through here. Developing project type specific checklists and process sheets to ensure consistency and effectiveness. Updating our contract language, developing more streamlined request for proposal and request for qualification processes, and a bank of sample documents and materials to speed up that process. Consistently updating cost estimates on projects spanning multiple fiscal years so that we don't have to bring quite as many budget amendments to you. I'm hoping after all this ARPA money dries up, we won't be seeing 30 and 40% increases in project costs. Addressing a lack of clearly identified and explained links from the comprehensive plan to capital improvement plan to the strategic plan. We'll talk about that more when we get down into the planning process. Inconsistent use of or failure to adequately use community engagement committees and task forces, and inconsistent use or failure to adequately partner with a vast array of community resources and experience where and when appropriate. And then we budgeted this year for a full-time capital improvements director position. And a quick update on that. We conducted panel interviews last week. 9 candidates were interviewed by the panel. The panel was made up of Mr. Paul Trask from our Planning Commission, Mr. Dan Blackman as a citizen representative, Ms. Taylor Ladd from Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer Authority, and Mr. Nate Farrow, our Public Works Director. We were supposed to have a representative from Dominion Energy present, but due to scheduling conflicts, she had to back out at the last minute. But they have made their recommendations, and we will begin the final round of interviewing. Mr. Marshall, Ms. Linda Roper, and myself will conduct those final round of interviews, and I'm hoping sometime in October, I'll be introducing you to the new capital improvements director. It's a very thorough process. The panel did a great job, and I was very impressed with their feedback and their assessment. So before I move on, is there any questions or comments about the changes we've made over the past 6 to 8 months with the project, or, excuse me, with the project management system?
I just want to thank you and the CIP team for the development of all these SOPs. I think they were, greatly needed, and it's going to help us be a little more efficient and effective going forward, I think. So
Thank you, sir.
appreciate that.
And transparent.
Were there any public comments about that? All right, I'll move on.
Hearing none.
Yes.
Sorry, you asked public comment about which point?
Just the stuff that we've gone over up until this point.
I had comments about prior discussion.
You mean before this CIP?
JJ.
The ARPA funding.
Oh, yeah, we can, or we can wait till the very end if you want to, Paul. Okay. Dan, you can, yeah. Give us your name and address, Dan, so for the record.
My name is Daniel Blackman. I live at 1010 Duke Street. And as a member of the group that interviewed people, we had great candidates, I have to tell you, both internally and externally. And I was frankly surprised that we got such great people by their resumes and by their interviews. I'm a little disturbed, though, by October, when a number of these candidates, so anything you can do to speed up the hiring of the manager would be welcome, because the process that you're doing needs the manager to get involved now, because this is a highly technical process that you're doing, integrating all of these. And there are candidates that are aware of that type of thing and have initiated it. So I would hate to see us adopt a software situation and then hire somebody who tells us that we made a mistake. So the sooner we get the manager on board while we're doing the integration, the better. That's my point.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. The timeline was based on the assumption that most candidates would need to work a 2 week to 30-day notice in their positions. I'd love to have them on board as quickly as possible. If it had been completely left up to me, they would have been on board July 1. So moving into our proposal for the capital improvements planning process moving forward.
You're gonna do the GIS first?
Oh, yeah, I apologize. Yes, we're going to introduce our GIS technician, Justin Giardini. I'm gonna let him talk about himself and introduce you to our GIS portal. It is live. The page is under construction on the website. This is what it looks like. And I'll turn it over to him to walk us through that, and then I will step back up and walk us through the Airtable portal.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Justin.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Council. So my name is Justin Giardini. I'm the GIS analyst for the city. I was onboarded back in February, working remotely on some things, getting the city's GIS system up and running. There are still some things that need to be up and running, hence the under construction. But the past couple of months I've been here.
Can you speak up a little bit more?
Oh, sure.
Justin? Yeah.
The past couple months I've been here, I've been creating apps, applications, maps, and print maps that would be beneficial to the citizens, stakeholders, and internal staff. So basically, I've created a frequently asked questions page for GIS to get those parties involved and more informed on what GIS is. So of course, I'm not going to go through all of this, but in a couple brief sentences, GIS is basically data that's represented visually. So you can think of Apple Maps or Google Maps. GIS is a more specialized, customized version of those products. So whenever you see a point on a map or a line on a map, that's data represented visually. And if we go back to and take a look at some of the things I've been working on, this is on the city's public website. So you're able to go to the government GIS, and then you can click on the GIS gallery. And these are some of the applications and maps I've been making for public facing purposes. So I'll just kind of list a couple of them off. One specifically, which JJ will go more in depth with as well, is the capital projects dashboard. But one thing that in the previous cities that I've worked at is necessary for all cities to have is a city map. So you may ask what a city map is. A city map is basically a map that welcomes anybody for any type of use. So it could be a parent who wants to know what school zones they're in, or what school is closest to them. It could be a contractor who needs to know contour lines or the elevation of a certain area to determine whether a property is safe to be built on that area. And it could also range from even just searching up parcels, property appraisals, things like that. So this is the homepage of the city map. And you can see we have this icon all the way over here, which looks like a 3 stack. This is going to be the layers. So you can see on here we have a layer for future land use, city-owned properties, solid waste service days of the week. There's those contours, building footprints, the parks as well. So a city map basically has everything represented on it to be used by any citizen for whatever purpose they deem necessary. If we were to test this out, and let's go ahead and check the parcel information for City Hall, we can see a pop-up be displayed in a second. Yep, so we have some information. So this pop-up is being pulled from the parcel layer. If I turned on the parks layer, you would see a pop-up of a park, like Washington Park or something like that. But for parcels, just for demonstration purposes, we have the political and jurisdiction information for that parcel. We also have some other parcel information as well. And we even have that parcel linked directly to Beaufort County's property appraisal website. So there's no need for any citizen to wonder whether or not they live in the city of Beaufort or to go to Beaufort County. The purpose of having GIS in-house within a city is if something is misrepresented, GIS is constantly and continuously updated. So again, the purpose of having GIS within the city, if something is misrepresented, it's easier to send an email to someone you work with down the hall saying, hey, this doesn't look right. We maybe need to update it, than sending it to the county and having to wait on a response that could take a week, 2 weeks, whatever time that they deem necessary. But that's the purpose of having GIS within the city. Another project is the capital projects dashboard. So this is something that I've been working on to get updated as well. This is basically what JJ talked about for that Airtable. So again, like I talked about with clicking on a parcel, we could click on a specific project. So we could click on First South Carolina Volunteer Park, and it will zoom to that project. And it will give us detailed information of the status, whether it's on budget, on schedule, a description, the fiscal year it was started, and the phase it's in. So we can see by the legend what phase it's in. So blue is proposed, brown is planning design, gray is bid, green is underway, and red is postponed. We have that popped up as well. And for more detailed information, there's an option to go to a public Airtable portion of that as well to get some more of the capital project information that I am not able to represent visually on a map. But those are some of the things I've been working on for the city. Again, I cannot overstate this enough that GIS is constantly and continuously being updated. Data is sourced from various entities such as Beaufort County. So a lot of the data you see is data from Beaufort County that I've been able to manipulate so it better represents and helps the citizens of the community. But there's also utility companies like Beaufort Jasper Water Authority for fire hydrants, for our fire department so that they can do their inspections faster and make sure the fire hydrants are up to date. So those are just a couple examples of what I've been working on in the city as far as GIS. But are there any statements, public comment, questions?
It's long overdue, because half the time I don't know what's going on in the city. I don't know. Oh, I see a big old clear cut piece of property and what's going there, you know?
No.
It's
That's-
very helpful.
No, I'm sorry. No, that's what I was gonna ask. Is it available right now? If we clicked on, say, a clear cut piece of property, it'll tell us what phase it's in for development and what it's gonna be.
Mm,
Let's go on, let's try 170, maybe one of the.
Are you
apartment-
speaking about Energov
I'm
or,
talking about private project, that,
or capital improvement?
Councilman Lipset, I think what you're referring to is what we're going to refer to as our permit locator map. And that permit locator map is not online yet.
Okay, that's
One of the items we budgeted for in this current fiscal year was to be on board with Energov, which is a software suite that allows us to integrate with our permit system. And then seamlessly that data can be transferred into a GIS map. And we are in the finalization stages of implementing Energov. And then the next step will be to integrate it with these GIS maps.
okay, that is what I was referring to.
I
Thank
don't
you.
have icons popping up, right?
Mm, Correct, yep.
We do have one online public comment, Justin.
I know that this is still in the works. And the utility providers are gonna be part of this. Will this also show if there's a service outage in any specific area? Like, would they be able to see that and then who the contact is for whoever the utility provider is? Or will it just have the city's contact? Or like on a project like this where it says contact, JJ, so if there's a partnership on a project, will it also have a contact for whoever the city is partnering with?
Pretty good.
As far as the capital projects, I'm not sure, but as far as utility companies, and who's responsible for that, that could be a possibility. But as far as like the capital projects and, seeing like that, I'm not sure JJ would have the answer.
I'm just wondering, because if people are gonna be using this for, basically a one-stop shop, then if they come here and they can see if there's an outage in any specific area, and then maybe we could, further provide who they could contact in order to get that fixed. I know that that's, an additional layer. I'm not sure if that's something that's been talked about, but it was just a thought.
That has been discussed as a down the road layer as far as for the entire city, utility providers and contact information that would divert the person back to the appropriate utility. As far as on capital projects, we tend to refer them directly back to the project manager. That way we can communicate with whoever it is, because what we've run into, Allison Road as an example, is we get a complaint a week later where they've been trying to reach out to the utility and they get a online system or a phone recording. And then by the time they get to the city, they're very upset that no one has responded to them. If they come straight to the project manager, we can go directly to our counterparts with those utilities and hopefully resolve that issue much faster.
Understood.
Well, thank you, Justin. We
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, council, once it is completely built out, we will have a link under our capital improvements page on the website. In the meantime, if you pull up the dashboard in GIS and you go down to this little link where it says for more detailed information, it takes you to our Airtable portal. And this is the public facing portal for that internal project management system that I was talking about. And say we want to look at the Duke Street project. They're broken down into types of projects: streetscapes, parks, facilities, stormwater, roadway, trails, other infrastructure, and then a combination streetscape and stormwater. Say we select Duke Street Streetscape and Drainage Project. And here, the community can see that this is an active capital project. The type of project, what stage it's in, which is planning design, that I'm the contact as the project manager. a brief description of the project. Under attachments, the first attachment will always be just a cover image that comes up for the public. But this is where the public will be able to go to get presentations, reports. We're in the process of integrating all of that still. It's just a matter of turning it on to upload everything. We've had to go through and reduce the size of some of the documents to make it fit. The approved amended budget balance, public updates. We'll try to go in and update anytime, at least monthly, but anytime there's a need that needs to be updated, what the start date is, an end date if we have one. In this case, the Duke Street project, we are still exploring construction funding opportunities, and we're still in the design engineering phase. Our goal is to have the design engineering done by November 30th at the latest. And then the rest of the to-do list is a tentative schedule. As we continue to build out these projects and we bring the project manager in-house, our capital improvements director, they will be able to build out these tasks internally to where they can be assigned to various people within the CIP team. They'll be able to create what we call critical paths, which are pathways in the schedule, things that have to be completed before you can move on to the next item. And it will help tremendously with communication. The schedule, the tasks that you see in here today are broad. Here are the big picture tasks that we need to complete. That will get much more detailed as the CIP director gets in here. And that's one of the things that, to Dan's comment, we're leaving open for them to set those tasks up the way they see best fit. But say, exploring funding opportunities, we have a specific grant that we want to explore for a project. They can create a task in the system and assign it to Alan and Carrie and give them a deadline and say, here's the grant I want you to explore. And so they get a notification, they know it goes on their calendar automatically within the SharePoint Office 365 system. They know, here's my deadline. I've got to get this grant information back by this meeting. And it cuts down on emails, cuts down on constant back and forth, trying to communicate things slipping through the cracks. It's one system that controls all of that. If they want to upload the information, Alan completes a memo explaining what their recommendation is. He can go into the Airtable system to the form, the upload form, and he can upload that memo, and it's shared with the entire capital projects team, and it's saved to that project. And once, if it's something that needs to become public, we can make that a public document. So this will be huge tool for us internally and for the public for keeping them informed. So the Pigeon Point landing, which I'm sure many people are here in this room tonight to hear about, you have all the basic information, and you'll see that we completed the citizen survey. We're still exploring potential additional funding opportunities for the actual construction, but we're presenting survey results to council and defining the scope for the RFP. I have the end date on that being the 27th, but we'll actually hopefully come to a conclusion on that here tonight. Once that's done, I'll mark it as complete, and then we will add a task, or we already have the oversight design master planning services, but if we have to go out for an RFP, RFQ on that, we would build out those tasks for the finance department to put out that RFP, bid the project, and make sure we have that timeline built in, and the public will be able to see all of that. Any questions from council about the Airtable portal?
Just a comment.
Yes, sir.
Great job
Thank you, sir.
between this and the C-Click fix. I mean, just very transparency for the public, easy to get hold of us, easy to find out things. Congratulations to you and to City Manager Marshall.
Thank you. And we're also working with SK Designs, recording how-to videos that will go on the website that show the actual screen where people need to click in addition to the frequently asked questions that are going up. I know Justin recorded his video the other day, and that'll be going up probably before the end of this week. I've still got to record mine with the Airtable. I know you had one online. No, Not
Yeah,
anymore?
yeah, sorry, they put their hand down.
Put their hand down, okay. Any public comment
Public
or
comment?
questions?
Hearing.
I agree.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there, laying a foundation. All right. So moving into the capital improvement planning process. Now, this is something I've talked with all of you individually about. Many members of the public have heard me talk about this process. I've seen this work in other localities, both cities and counties. I've seen this process work for nonprofits, and I've seen it work for private entities that are brought in to assist local governments and nonprofits. But our goal is to create a capital improvements plan that gives council and the public a 10-year outline of any known and anticipated capital costs for both internal and recurring needs, such as fleet and equipment replacement, facility needs. And then also, that's one half of the picture. The other half of the picture are community needs. We've talked a lot about the King Street project. I wasn't here when the King Street project started. There's been a lot of back and forth about how the community engagement went in that process, but nobody seems to be able to point exactly back to where did this project originate? Where was the community engagement throughout the process? Where was the input? Our goal with this program is to give us that roadmap. There should never be a question to council or the public where the need for a capital project comes from. If that was a need that was identified by Nate's Public Works Department because they're constantly responding to that area to deal with something, if it was a need that was brought forward to us from the Pigeon Point Neighborhood Association, if it was something that was brought forward by a developer, if it was something that council saw out there, you received multiple complaints. We need a process to tie all of that back to where did this project come from? And then each step of the way, how was this identified as a priority? How, that touchy mouse on me again, I apologize.
JJ, while you're doing that,
Yep.
and Mike, maybe you remember, didn't we do a study a few years ago on facilities and they kind of, have you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen that document?
I have not. I
Have
know.
you seen that?
Which
Nate,
document are you referring to, Mayor?
It was several years ago, and I can't remember who did it, but we had a facility survey done for everything that, in the city for city property.
Johnson
Controls.
controlled.
Yeah.
And
that
I
up
know,
on
I
all
know
the
you've
facilities and
seen it because you
mechanicals.
sent it to me.
The
I think,
facility condition assessment, I think is what you're
Yeah, I
referring
think
to.
that's what it was, yeah. I know it's outdated, but I'm just saying that's available.
Baseline then.
It's a good place to start, yeah. So that's one half of the screen or the view. The other half is working with the Planning Commission and Council to identify key community stakeholders within our City of Beaufort neighborhoods and having these stakeholders serve as neighborhood representatives, 3 to 4 from each neighborhood. That may be something that members of if they already have a neighborhood association, the officials there may be the ones, they may make recommendations, but identifying some stakeholders for each neighborhood and having them serve as our immediate liaisons for this planning process. They will assist us in leading discussions at future neighborhood level meetings. We'll brief those stakeholders in group sessions so that everybody is hearing the same information together on the proposed process and seek input from them for community needs surveys that we are in the process of developing based on our already identified capital needs, such as problem stormwater drainage areas, known roadway paving needs. Those surveys will be distributed within city limits of Beaufort. We're working on partnering with local higher education and nonprofits to develop volunteers to assist in that distribution process and the completion of those surveys, even if that needed to be done with door-to-door surveying. Neighborhood level meetings will be advertised and hosted once that survey data has been obtained and analyzed. These neighborhood meetings will be open to the public and recorded with an emphasis on developing participation from property owners, business owners, and residents of each neighborhood. Summary data from the surveys will be discussed at these meetings for each neighborhood, and each neighborhood representative group will ultimately identify its top 3 to 7 capital needs. It doesn't mean they have to have 3 to 7. We may have some neighborhoods that say, I have 1, 2 things that we all agree we need to move forward on. But we would cap it at 3 to 7 things that would need to be looked at. And then the CIP team will create a project initiation proposal form for each capital need for all the neighborhoods that summarizes the proposed project, outlines how the proposed project was identified as a need, an initial staffing and budgetary needs assessment, relationships to the comprehensive plan and strategic plan initiatives, and an initial public economic environmental impacts assessment. That's the form that I sent to council earlier today. It was not included as an appendices item. All of the members of the capital projects team have access to those forms in our SharePoint system, and I'm happy to share that document with members of the public. But that's, again, creating that link back to where did these projects come from? And it helps us to triage them and make a decision as to where they fall in staff recommended priorities, and then helps y'all make a decision when we bring it forward to council. The neighborhood capital needs priorities will be, apologize. There we are. Will be compiled into a new capital improvements plan with appendices items, including the survey results and links to the recording of all the neighborhood meetings. This plan will be presented to the Planning Commission for review and discussion and public comment. The reason it's going to the Planning Commission is it's our proposal to take this new capital improvements plan and adopt it as an amendment to the comprehensive plan. It would take the place of the current forecasted needs. I can't remember exactly what it's called in our comprehensive plan, but that would be formally adopted so that there would be a clear link between our comprehensive plan, our strategic planning, our capital improvements planning, and each annual budget that we adopt. Once finalized and recommended for adoption by the Planning Commission, the new capital improvements plan will be presented to council for review and adoption. There'll be multiple further opportunities for public comment at that point. And then once adopted as part of the comprehensive plan, CIP team will begin assessing funding and resource allocation options for each of the identified projects using the priorities that were identified by each neighborhood and the city staff for each type of project. And then at each quarterly CIP work session and the annual strategic planning work sessions for city council, we'll provide updates on the status of those identified projects and receive feedback and input on any scheduling or priority conflicts. And depending on the specific project complexity, city or community task forces may be activated as needed to spearhead that planning, such as was done for the Mossy Oaks project. So this approach that we're proposing, it adopts best practices from the Municipal Association of South Carolina, Government Finance Officers Association, the International Municipal County Management Association, also known as ICMA, and then my alma mater, the University of North Carolina School of Government, and various other public sector and industry leaders. And our goal with adopting a process like this is fivefold. We want to increase transparency by creating a clear and documented process for how projects are identified and prioritized, ensuring that all areas within the city of Beaufort have an opportunity to identify and prioritize their needs. We want to increase active and meaningful, those being the key words, active and meaningful public engagement through surveys, neighborhood canvassing, citizen committees, public input sessions, public hearings, task forces, and official adoption through the ordinance processes. We want to increase transparency and effectiveness in the budgeting process by providing clear long-term and immediate picture of known and anticipated financial needs, and increase efficiency and effectiveness of our internal staff processes by creating clear priorities and a long-range window for exploring funding and partnership opportunities and managing both our active and our planned capital projects. So I know that's a lot. It's a pretty hands-on approach. There's a lot of moving parts to it. But I think taking the time to do a process like this upfront is the appropriate way to move forward with capital projects. Does council have any questions or comments, concerns, criticisms?
No, I like the process because it opens it up, so. Good way to proceed.
No, I like it. I think it's going to be extremely beneficial. If I had a concern, which I don't even know if there's a way for us to address it, it would be how quickly these estimates change, because I think any long-term planning is going to be hard for us if we're seeing a 40-50% increase on the estimate in a year or two, especially on some of these expensive projects. And then by that time, we've paid for the study and the consulting and potentially don't have the funds to even come close to moving forward with the project.
Yeah, it's going to be an incredibly dynamic process. I understand the CIP director position is initially funded through ARPA funds for the next 3 years. I don't believe there's going to be any concern with filling the CIP director's plate moving beyond that 3 years. If we do this process right and you constantly have these projects and that 10-year look ahead that we're working towards, identifying, applying for grants, actively pursuing partnerships and funding opportunities, that's a full-time job. And we're a big enough city that we have these constant needs, both unidentified and currently identified new projects and just in recurring costs. Nate and his guys can't do everything constantly. They work around the clock as it is.
I don't think we're going to be seeing those 40 to 50% increases once all the ARPA money dries up. Hopefully might be a 5%, 7%.
I hope so. I fully believe that's the case. I'm sure Scott will hear more about it when he goes to the ICMA conference. When I was with some friends right after the North Carolina City County Managers Conference, they were complaining about the exact same thing. When we went to the Municipal Association Conference, everybody was talking about the same issues. SCORE the other day, the South Carolina Office of Resiliency, when we were discussing the downtown stormwater projects, their cost estimates were based on what they are actually seeing in real time all across the state. They said it's not localized to the low country. It's not a Beaufort problem. It's a nationwide issue. So hopefully that goes away here in a couple of years. Online.
Yeah, give me just 1 second. Mr. Trask, you're able to speak.
Hi, Graham Trask, 1211 Bay Street. I just wanted to take a step back. First of all, I wanted to congratulate JJ and the CIP team and that young gentleman sitting down in the front row there, who did all the GIS map work, for what they have been able to do to date. I've had multiple conversations with JJ and applaud him for not only his engagement, but his transparency, his candor, and his real problem-solving approach to fundamental questions that I've had, to include getting some of the project analysts on the phone to go through some of the projects that are major projects for downtown. As part of that discussion with JJ, it's clear that there's a lot of money that is trying to find projects. It's the reason why the prices of projects have increased 50 or 100%. And this is all going to fall off a cliff on January 1st, 2027, when this 350 billion comes to a screeching halt. What that means is that as you guys go through the next session where JJ goes through the projects, you need to think about projects that can be deferred. Because come 2027, prices for projects are going to plummet. And so non-necessary projects that might have been approved or budgeted for, but aren't a public safety issue or can be pushed off, should be pushed off. Again, as I listen, and it's interesting to listen from afar, there is a lot of projects and lots of money. And it's kind of like watching, I would analogize it to kids in a candy store. Before JJ even had an opportunity to go through the projects, all 5 of you guys said how you'd like to spend the $800,000. Before even hearing anything he had to say, you came in here with an agenda on how to spend that money. I frankly think it's gross. And I think that we need to have, as a city council, ask ourselves some hard questions around the trade-offs that we have to make as what is in effect a board of a major company with a budget of $60 million. And there are trade-offs. It's not that every project gets funded. It's not that every wish list should get funded. And so I hope and I implore you guys that as you listen to the next deep dives and going through these projects, that you ask yourselves those questions. So for example, this afternoon I asked JJ, how did the Calhoun Street, what was the genesis of the Calhoun Street project? It's a $3 million project. He didn't know. He didn't know because it came before him. But maybe you guys know. But I don't know. And he didn't have the answer. And it's a big question mark in my mind. I hope it's a question mark in your mind. And I hope you'll ask the same question. The other project, which has already been talked about, is the King Street project, where the scope of the project hopefully has been reduced significantly, and some of that money can be allocated somewhere else. The third major project is the Craven Street, Charles Street drainage project. It's an $8 million project, which will go to $15 million. Where are you going to get the money? And the reason it's going to $15 million is you have to do it to get the money before the 31st of December. I believe that that project will destroy the economic viability of downtown over the year that it takes to build that project. I think there are some fundamental questions that can be asked on how to reduce the scope of the project, and still address major drainage issues. And I have given some of that information to JJ. But in wrapping up, and I appreciate you guys allowing me this time, I really do implore you, and I think citizens are watching you on how you behave in evaluating these projects. Because to date, it's only been about spending money. And there are trade-offs to make where money can be taken from one project to another project, which is of higher priority. But to me, as I look through this packet, there's no prioritization. Now, JJ is talking about fixing that, but we're talking about spending tens of millions of dollars today without that. And so that needs to happen as you guys listen to JJ go through these projects for the benefit and love of Beaufort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Trask.
Anybody else online?
Anybody from the public? Hey, Paul?
I'm Paul Trask. I live at 610 Bladen Street. I'm speaking as a private citizen, not as a member of the Planning Commission. I also want to thank JJ for what he's been doing on the capital projects process here. This is very good and well needed. But I want to add something. We've got an issue with our procurement process. So for example, we've got the situation of the Pigeon Point Landing. We're planning to spend $80,000 on an engineering study to tell us what to do. Then we're going to put out an RFP and we're going to specify what the contractor is supposed to do, and we're going to get a price that's going to be really, really high. We need to examine the procurement process, for example, and we need to do a design build on a project like that. So we've got, for example, O'Quinn Marine Construction, second generation business here in Beaufort. They do work for the county under a similar design build situation. Why in the world are we not going to someone like O'Quinn and saying, let's sit down, we've got a citizen survey, here it is. They do electrical work. I'm sure they can arrange paving work. They can arrange a crabbing dock. Those are the priorities, in addition, of course, to the landing itself. Now, this company is experienced enough to help figure out how to construct a dock and protect it from the very high wakes of barges and so forth going by. So that's one point I'd like to make. Procurement process, please. Then I listened to you discuss the ARPA funds. So the city manager hit it on the head. He told you what needs to be the priority, and that's the waterfront park. On October 30, you've got an RFQ that's going to be opened. And let's just say it's McSweeney. I mean, that's the logical candidate. They know everything about it. They've done all the work before. So they can be instructed to go to various contractors who have experience with a relieving platform, all that sort of thing. So let's just assume it's going to be McSweeney. You can allocate ARPA money to that contract and get that process going. Now, everything that you talked about, the neighborhood revitalization, even adding $100,000 or $200,000 is insufficient. We've already put 50 in it. It's already there. I wasn't in favor of that from the beginning. It's not sufficient. There needs to be another funding source identified. The Duke Street project, JJ just said that they're seeking funding for that. And he said that the bids are not going to come back until late October. So there's really no way that you're going to then put out an RFP and hire a contractor and get all that done before the end of the year. So you're not going to be able to use ARPA funds for that project. Josh spoke about the parallel road tying in Neal to North. I think that's a very worthy project. I would support that, but that's out of scale for ARPA funds. That's not something that is on the discussion for right now, I don't think. So here are my points. I got 3 points. Number one, you need to figure out where to cut off King Street right now. You need to cut it off so that some of those dollars can be returned to the ARPA balance so that you've got those available to perhaps do the Pigeon Point Landing or engage McSweeney or whatever it's going to be. You can do, if you can't figure it out, you've still got the 11th hour to be able to add these smaller projects. You can do that in November. You can still get it under the wire, but you need to focus on the waterfront park, in my view, and something practical like perhaps doing a design build for Pigeon Point, and let's get it done. Let's actually get something good done. Number two, well, I just said it, McSweeney. The RFQ process. And I also said number three, which is the procurement process. So I've gotten ahead of myself. Thank you very much. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else? Hearing none, JJ, you're back up.
Everybody's beating me to my talking points tonight. We are, when we get to the Pigeon Point discussion, which is coming up here in just a little bit, one of the questions I had for council would be, are you, and y'all just think about this for the time being, are you opposed to us looking at design build contracts, considering for these ARPA-funded projects, considering we are under the gun for things that might be able to speed up the process? So moving on to, very slowly with this computer, our project updates. The first thing I would like to ask council is, do you like this format for the project summaries for your monthly reports? Does this cover the information that you would like to see? Again, as the projects go on and we refine these processes and the tasks, those lists will get longer, the information will get more detailed. But we wanted a single page summary for each project. And as long as y'all are good with this format, this is what we will stick with for the time being.
One question, JJ. So some of them I saw did have estimates, but the budget is what we budgeted for and the balance is what's left on this project. So the difference would be what's spent, right?
That
But
is
none
cor-
of these are the estimates for the project, not in the top right.
That's
corner.
correct,
Okay.
yes. Yep, and as of right now, that is still a manual process. Sandy in our finance department provides that information to me each month, and I have to go in and manually update those as we continue to integrate these processes. That will all be done automatically as they update within their system. And then ideally, as we move forward the OpenGov, eventually you council and the public will be able to see exactly what funds the money's coming from, pie chart showing expenditures. There'll be much more information. This is just the first iteration for us. So the 170-21 sidewalk, we don't really need to talk about much because we postponed that unless council wants to readdress it. The Carnegie Library improvements. It's been broken down into two bids, one for the roofing and one for gutter replacement, and roofing and gutter replacement, one for interior repairs. We have continued to work with Metters on that. It is out for bid right now. And as of today, our procurement officer, Jay Phillips, said that we have had several people reach out in expressing interest in that bid process. That closes
31st.
31st, right? No. Bid opening is the 11th. That's right. We had to postpone all of our bids that were out during Debbie because 1 week for the storm. Any questions about Carnegie Library? Calhoun Street. This project is one that we may be bringing back to you to discuss the ARPA funding that's been dedicated to it. We've run into some delays between LCOG and South Carolina Commerce. Both the city and the county are working with both entities to address easement issues and condemnation on one of the county projects. And so I don't know that we're going to be able to meet both our CDBG timeline. We did get an extension to the end of the year. I don't know that we're going to be able to meet both the CDBG timeline or the ARPA timeline with this project. So that may be one that's coming back in front of you here soon to discuss.
How long has the easement issues been out there? Seems like a long time.
So these easements, they were discussing when I started with capital projects in February. What we have run into, just a summary of the issue, is traditionally if you ended up having to do condemnation. It's just for the sidewalk, basically a construction easement. You would have the property assessed, you would file the action, you would put money in bond. And after the appeal period, the project would move forward. And really only thing that's being argued over at that point is the cost, the fair market value of the property. What the counties run into with some of theirs is South Carolina Commerce has told them you cannot proceed with any portion of the project until the entire court case is completely settled, either through a settlement or disposition. The problem with that is that could be 18 months, 24 months, 3 years. We don't know. Everybody knows how the court process works. It's a very slow process. I've never dealt with that here in South Carolina, but I doubt it's much faster than what I was used to. That could significantly delay projects. And our question to LCOG and to Commerce has been, if you have to go through that process, are you going to guarantee our grant funding for that period of time? And what about the potential increase in costs associated with the project that would necessarily come with that time? So there's a lot of moving parts there. Just a heads up that we may be bringing that back to you in the ARPA discussion. Yes, sir, Councilman Mitchell.
JJ, to Paul Trask's point, as we look at these projects that we may be butting up against the deadlines and risking losing the ARPA funding, are we kind of looking at each of them and saying, at this point, we've got to make a decision so that we don't kind of drift into the red zone where the decision is taken away?
Yes, sir. So the deep dives were the projects that staff identified. We need to talk to council right now about how we're moving forward on things. Everything else, if there's something like Calhoun Street, it's a immediate need, but we know it's going to be part of the overall ARPA assessment, and we're going to be bringing that back to you pretty soon, probably in September sometime, I would guess, because we have to move quickly to address those.
And I say that because I suspect, I don't know exactly which projects they are, but it would be a shame to lose ARPA funds when we have things that we can spend it on that we know we can make happen.
That is correct. And we have some ideas we've talked about internally of ways that we can speed up some of the processes. The design build approach that Mr. Trask brought up is one of those. Rather than doing the traditional approach the city has taken with the engineering, getting all of that done before, and then trying to bid it out potentially in phases, just going ahead because we need to secure that funding. If we're going to move forward with a project, if there's something that we could do that way, it may be appropriate in this circumstance.
But the CDBG funding doesn't give us that flexibility.
It does not on the CDBG projects. Those have to follow federal procurement, and that is a potential issue with the ARPA funding, depending on what type of project we're moving forward. So again, I wanted to, as we got into these projects and we started talking about it, at least get a feel for are you okay with us exploring design bid as opposed to design bid build, if it's something that is feasible?
I am.
I am.
I am.
Yes.
Any other?
Especially
Yes,
if
sir.
it means not losing the money. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Depot Road Spanish Moss Trail Extension, this is a county project. Because it is in the city, it made sense with our having Carrie and her grant experience. It made sense to run the project through the city, but we do not manage any aspect of it. As you see, the task we have there is oversee county administration of the project. Brittany Bishop and Jennifer, I apologize, I forget her last name. Was it Jennifer Bragg? That's correct. With the county, have been running that project. And that's another one of the CDBG projects where they've run into a right-of-way issue, and we're waiting on clarification.
Any idea how long the delays are gonna be on that? I've been hearing a lot of people waiting for it.
Yeah, we don't know.
Don't want to
Our city legal counsel and county legal counsel got together and have sent a letter to Commerce's legal team. They're dealing directly with their legal counsel is where we're at, trying to get some clarification so we can move forward.
So before you go on, one, I did have somebody ask me about the width of this, and I didn't know if we had that information, but I wanted to ask you just in case you did. Do you know what the width of this pathway will be?
I do not off the top of my head, but let's look at something real
Either
quick.
8 or 10.
I think it was 10. I thought it was 10 feet. I thought I remembered.
That does sound correct.
It'd be multi-mode.
No, I don't have I don't have an additional attachment for that project since it is a county project. But I can find that out for you. They're interested in the width of the entire project or 10 feet.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then it
Yes, sir.
sounds like Brittany may be a contact for understanding, because one of the other concerns was where the county was in the condemnation process. And so that probably be a question for the county representative.
Yeah, that would be one of the project man. I know Brittany Ward, attorney for the county, is who we've been working with on that. And I'm happy to pass along the person's information if you want to give that to me after the meeting.
Yep.
Okay. All right, any questions about Depot Road?
And then I think last time we got an update on this, the next steps was the final DOT and CDBG approval. I don't see it in there this time. Does that mean that we got it, or was it just not in the next steps?
I don't know because it was a county run. As we were trying to fine tune these updates, the number one issue became the right of ways. And my understanding is that's the only thing holding the project up. So those were most likely completed
Okay.
pending the right of way.
I talked to somebody today about it, and they said that's the only thing holding it up are the 3 right-of-ways.
Yeah. They did file the condemnation actions, but I don't know where they're at in that process. Marina fuel tank replacement has kind of gone on the back burner as we're working through the marina and the waterfront park discussions. Unless y'all have a very specific question with that, nothing's changed. I'm gonna move relatively quickly through all of the point projects because we're gonna kind of dive into that a little bit. Bayard Street, as you know, is one of the point projects that we are responsible for. SCORE's not handling that one. Bayard Street is one of the locations that did flood during Debbie. If you look on our city social media pages, where Public Works is standing in the intersection pumping water that's up to their top of their boots, that was on Bayard Street. And where we're at on that is we're in discussions with property owner to finalize a easement for an outfall, and everything on that project is going according to plan. The updated cost estimate was not much more. It's a relatively simple project as far as stormwater projects go.
Is that outfall? I thought was going to be on the, a little piece of road that the city owns between 2 properties, between the,
It is on the Stoddard property.
okay.
Yes, sir. Charles and Craven Street, everything is on schedule with those. We have continued to meet with property owners. Mr. Jason Hetrick with McCormick Taylor met with some property owners, spoke to them over the phone after the rain to confirm that it's flooded in the usual areas. We met with Mr. Trask over, Mr. Graham Trask over Teams the other day and answered his questions. And I know Mr. Trask has submitted some additional questions to Mr. Hetrick, and he's looking at that modeling and going to respond to those. And I provided counsel, or Scott provided counsel with a summary from both Davis and Floyd and McCormick Taylor on their assessments during the storm, that they're working on a more formal memorandum for the public on. Port Republic, Carteret Street, same update. Those projects are managed by the South Carolina Office of Resiliency, and the engineers are McCormick Taylor. And we meet bi-weekly on those. Our next meeting for those is Thursday to discuss how this council meeting went and what they need to pursue on funding. The King Street project, we had our first meeting with the Drain Gang a couple of weeks ago. We shared that recording with council. I believe it went well. I think we're very close to reaching a scoping and design that is as close to the existing infrastructure as you can get while still building in resiliency and the opportunity to expand the outfall if needed down the road. But I think it was a very good meeting, and I'll talk a little bit more about our recommendations on that here in just a minute.
Real quick,
Yes, sir.
JJ, so on the 98th page of what is our packet, in reference to the King Street, there was a clause in here. It says, this rescoping to a system that maintains existing operations has the potential to jeopardize the current grant funding because it does not add to the resiliency of the community. I wonder where that's coming from, because I would still say that regardless of what we did, we would add to the resiliency of the community. So what is it exactly that would jeopardize the grant?
So we don't know exactly how competitive our new proposal will be. The previous proposal increased resiliency by,
JJ, could you speak up?
I want to say the number was approximately 90% for that whole drainage area. We just don't know. We could present it to RIA and they have no problems at all with it, or they could say this has reduced the increased resiliency to the point where we have other projects that can increase resiliency in other communities that it's more of an increase, and we think the funding would be better spent here. So we just don't know.
Gotcha.
So it's not, I can't give you a percentage level of what the risk is there, but it
Right,
is
but
a
it's
risk.
not that it won't add resiliency
Yeah,
to the community.
yeah.
It's just that the percentage attached would be
That
reduced.
it may be viewed as less than desirable by the granting authority. And that's just something we have to keep in mind. Washington Street Park, we've been behind the initial schedule, but we're out. That was due to some CDBG and LCOG issues we were working through with the bid process. That project is out to bid now, and our goal is to review those bids on the 11th, we said? No, 12th.
Construction's still gonna end by the end of the year? That's kind of.
We're gonna see what it looks like we can accomplish. Do we have an exact timeline, Linda? Washington Street? Yep.
The construction should be completed by December for the CDBG funded portion, which is of the construction that we're looking for right now. All that is out for bid is the pavilion and the moving of and the construction of the basketball court. So that construction needs to be finished by the end of the year. However, because we went through such a process of trying to get the bid corrected in the way that they wanted it, with only a portion of all of the needs that we want for the park, we do think we possibly, once we get a contract out there, but it's supposed to be 180 days for construction. So hopefully if we can get the contract done in time, we could finish by the end of the year, which still is past the timeline, but we will be closer to being able to ask for the funds to be expanded, extended throughout the contract. And then once that is done, we will begin the process of the rest of the park. We may do that in tandem near the end of the construction, so that we stop one construction, begin another. Does that make sense?
That would be why it's still showing on schedule. The Duke Street Streetscape and Drainage Project, we had a public meeting earlier this month that I think went very well, and we actually have Brian Webb and Mike Horton from Davis and Floyd that are gonna cover that portion of the presentation for you guys. They're on Zoom, so that'll come up on our screens when we get to that point. Actually, let me get through the brief overviews, and when we get down in the deep dives, we'll jump back on with Brian.
Okay.
Battery Shores Drainage, the engineers are out conducting the surveys, working on the plan. And Nate, do you want to give an update as to a timeline for that, or we're still shooting for before the end of the year, getting the construction started?
Put you on the spot there, Nate.
I know Battery Shores has come up a lot the past couple of weeks, so I figured I'd let Nate.
Yeah. So I haven't had a chance to speak with Jason about how far along he is in the engineering process yet. I know the last time that we spoke that he was still reaching out to OCRM and DHEC and them, trying to figure out where we would be with moving forward with doing a couple different things and seeing if that would make it a new project or if it would be able to be allowed with the existing project. And so we needed some clarification before we could get a little bit further in the design. And we are hoping that here in the next couple of weeks that we should have answers and we should be able to move forward with the design of not only the pond and outfall, but as well as some of the roadside drainage.
For anyone who doesn't know, we were out on site with property owners yesterday going over this project. The Pigeon Point drainage study, we've received our grant funding and are going out to bid on that. That may also be a potential design build. I'm not sure, but we're getting ready to bid that. Airport Road was completed back in the spring. This is what a completed project looks like. Everything done and project status complete. Pigeon Point Boat Landing, y'all have a full memorandum of the survey in your packet. We're going to jump into that here in just a minute. The North Street sidewalk extension for the Spanish Moss Trail, we're in the process of contracting for services. That's a small enough project that we did not have to go out for full bids. Nate's been working with construction firms on that. I plan to, again, have that done relatively quickly. Allison Road is under construction. We have had to expand the road closure through the end of the month, I believe it is. We just put that notice out. We ran into some communications hiccups with this new system and working with all the utility providers there. I think we've worked through all of those. I have personally seen mail and USPS, UPS, and FedEx deliver packages. Linda scrambled and was able to get the trash services back on schedule. We were actually out there pulling trash cans out to the road, trying to get everything caught up on that. But everything is going according to plan, other than the rain delay from Debbie.
We're still on point with budget.
Yes, we are still within budget.
Are we still looking at 12/1 completion?
Yes, I believe it is 12/1, yes.
Great.
Yep. And you will have, as soon as I mark it public, I believe I provided all of council several weeks ago, but a project schedule from the construction, Gulfstream Construction, on that can show you each step of that project process. Southside Park Phase 1 is still on schedule. We'll dive into that Here in just a little bit, we did have one issue, which was our sidewalks, but the inspectors caught that immediately, and the subcontractor was removed from the job, and the contractors have addressed the sidewalk issues. That was not at any additional cost to the city. That was, we did not accept that original product, but I believe Councilman Lipsitz was out there today and gave a good inspection.
Got a half a
Report.
roof up, got a half a roof
Got
up
half a
there.
roof up on the pavilion. Pigeon Point Playground, we have been working directly with our state procurement for playground equipment to get different themes of what the playground equipment could look like. Once we have those visuals, we're gonna distribute that out as a survey to determine what does the community want to see as that theme for the replacement. And then again, we hope to move pretty quick on that as soon as we get those images.
How about the budget? I'm showing 50,000. I thought it was 500,000 for the playground.
500,000, that's just that, again, I told you I was having to manually enter these. I went to law school specifically because I didn't want to have to do math anymore. And, and Alan's forcing me to get back at it. So I will correct that. I've made a note. First South Carolina Volunteer Park is still in the planning stages. Scott can give you guys an update on that. He's been kind of leading that up with all of you. It seems like we have some amazing ideas coming to light on that, and I think there'll be plenty of funding opportunities once a plan is in place. Are there any specific questions about that project?
One thing, just on the description, it's got a bluff beautification was a joint effort or endeavor by Beaufort County and the city of Beaufort. Open Land Trust is involved in that too. Because
Okay.
They were part of that.
.500 Carteret Street, window replacement exterior stucco. We're still developing the RFP for that. Our goal was to have that out this summer. You want to give an update on where we are on that, please? Yeah, on the the scope.
Procurement has the scope of work, and they are working through and gonna have a final packet ready to go out for bid here soon. It should be probably later this week or early next week to review, get it out there.
Once we receive that RFQ and the timeline, we'll go in and update all of our timelines for that. All Arsenal wall repairs, we do have some potential grant funding that we're pursuing in that, and as soon as we know where we are there, we've got to update the end date for explore funding opportunities. That's taken a little longer than anticipated, but it's not a high priority immediate need. So we've just been working through the other projects while we're waiting on that.
Is that budget figure correct?
For the
This is for the
study.
study,
Okay.
the consulting. Come on, you know.
So the Arsenal walls, we have we had it studied a while back. And this is consulting services just to take 2 phases or 3 phases and are split it into 3 phases. So right now it isn't, Metters has the contract for consulting. She is going to split it out in the most needed areas because the entire project to do the walls was $600,000, and that was about 3 years ago. So we're going to go, she's doing a study of the most needed sections and splitting this $600,000 one phase approach into 3 different phases. And so she should have that she's supposed to have that back to me beginning of October. And once that is done, then we'll have a good cost estimate. It'll include a cost estimate. And then we'll go forward with budgeting and finding funds to do the first phase.
Parallel Road Council identified as not a immediate priority back in January, so it has been postponed. Henry C. Chambers Park relieving platform fascia repairs, those are kind of on hold as we address Waterfront Park as a whole. And then we've went ahead and created a project sheet for the engineering portion, and that's again up in the air until we get the bids back, and then we'll start working on a timeline of exactly what needs to be done there. So any questions about just the big picture, quick reviews of the ongoing projects, where we're at, and the format in which we're presenting them in the monthly reports, and kind of where we're going with our project management system and the task and the communication?
Yeah, good. You can come on up. Rob, don't forget to give your name and your address.
Good evening, I'm Rob Cahill, 608 Water Street. It's in the City Walk neighborhood. It's about probably a couple stones throws from what is described here as a Spanish Moss Trail North Street sidewalk extension. So JG, I add my accolades for you and your team this is great to see it so visible. My question in part is, I hope it's not rhetorical, what does it take to kill a project? I mean, I was at this meeting, it says, project identified as an emerging priority by the council during the January 30th, 31st strategic planning retreat. I was at every minute of those 2 days. I did not come away with that meeting thinking that this was ever identified affirmatively as an emerging priority. In fact, I stood up at that meeting and said, I think this is if you have a lot of money, then spend it. But if you don't have a lot of money, this is frivolous and unnecessary. You can get to the trail by making on existing streets. So I'm just curious, JJ or someone, how does this still emerge all these months later? It's $30,000. And so I remember Scott saying, well, it's a little bit of money kind of stuff. Well, you know, on a fixed income, a little bit of money is a lot of bit of money. And I would just implore you, using a Graham's word, look at this stuff and have some fiscal restraint. You can save 30,000 and send it into the waterfront park. Thank you for listening.
Appreciate it, Rob. Ms. Rogers? Yep, okay. You can go.
Diane Farrelly, 2415 Oak Haven Street. I think this is amazing, and it's going to be a great resource for the citizens. My question in terms of the project overviews, if there could be a line item added for actual cost, budget, final, and well, final cost is zero. Like Airport Road, you could see there was still a budget line item, balance was zero, but what was the actual final cost? I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
That was 93,000, wasn't it? Rogers?
Edie Rogers, Rebo Island. I know you fellows wish I would stay.
Not at all.
You touched it. You broke it.
It's been broken for years. And I came here to share that with you again. Truly, we have sat here, and I've got my hearing aids in, but I can guarantee you, I am by no means the only person in this room who heard maybe 10% of what was said here tonight. You have to speak into a close microphone or it does not work. I learned that an awful long time ago. Not one of you is close enough to your microphone to be heard well. And if it needs an extension, I think we need to pay for that. I made this statement once before, I'm going to say it again. People stand here and do this, and then they do this to make sure all of you hear what they say. Well, you just turned away from that microphone. What happened? Uh-huh. I heard every word that Paul Trask said for two reasons. He spoke in the microphone and he projected his voice. And Linda was almost as good, I've got to say. At any rate, I've said it before, and I know you get tired of hearing me say it, but we've got to do that. The other little complaint I have is that ordinary citizen, I have to have readers, but as a rule, I can read in the distance. I can read your heading on these things you've shown on the screens, but not a word of the text. I would love to see that. Okay, you're going to tell me, go to the website and look at it. I am techno ignorant. And I don't deny it, and I don't want to go sit at I want to be able to read it when I come to the meeting and I see it up there. But I want to say, we need to fix what needs to be fixed. We've got two golden eggs in this town. One is the Chambers waterfront part, and the other one is the historic district. We've got a problem, we all know it. I agree wholeheartedly with Paul Trask that we have to put all these nice projects, they're nice projects. And I do notice that drainage is attached to nearly everything. Maybe that's the buzzword of the day. But put them on hold and let's get the darn park fixed. That could become a real safety item for you. And I don't think you want to face that. So my word of imparting is let's fix what needs to be fixed and prioritize. We've got to do that. And I also want to say, I was intending to ask about when Allison Road would be open again, and I believe I understood you to say we've extended it to the end of the month. Am I correct? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Eileen White, 521 New Street. Thank you for hearing my comments. I know you guys are,
Close to the mic.
no, and I was a drum major, so I know how to project, so I can be loud when I want to. So I understand that you are re-scoping the King Street drainage project, and I know that we're not doing the pump anymore. I'm just concerned about what the scope will be and how you're determining the scope. The study that was published back in February 2022 was done by experts. They used collected data, they used technology, they used software to protect future flooding. And I'm so happy you guys hear feedback, and I'm so glad that you work with the community. But the feedback that you're hearing is anecdotal. It's not data. In its current state. So I'm just respectfully asking you to use empirical data, to use the study to determine scope. And if you're not going to use that study that was published in 2022 for the King Street project, then I question how can you use it for the other projects? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. White. Anyone else? AJ, you. Oh.
No, I just want to ask, I do have a follow-up, but let JJ please finish his.
Okay.
All right, council, we will move into the project deep dives. It's Pigeon Point Landing, Duke Street, Streetscape and Stormwater, Point Downtown Stormwater Projects, and the South Side Park. Council, in your package, you have a memorandum that was completed back in July, and we were not able to get to it before today, that summarizes the survey results that went out. Had a huge response there. It's very clear that community cares very deeply about the Pigeon Point boat landing. And the results of that survey are summarized in the memorandum, and then the actual raw data directly from SurveyMonkey is attached as an addendum. I want to focus primarily today on two questions. When I get to the recommendations here at the end, are those the approaches you wish us to take and include in the scope of services? And two, if not, is there anything that council feels needs to be added or taken away from that as far as scope before we move forward with putting this project out? And I've already mentioned that this is a project that has the potential for design build if allowed with ARPA funding. And we will pursue that based on the feedback I received from council earlier. Apologize, the one I have up here on the screen doesn't have the page numbers.
Page 60, I think.
Page 60. So going to page 60 in your packet, the key themes and statistics from this project were that mentioned in 25% of the responses was dock repairs and improvements, urgency of the repairs, kayak, paddleboard access, parking improvements, wake issues, no wake zone, maintaining natural beauty in the environment, and trash management. And last, security and safety concerns. Key themes for both questions on these free responses were dock repairs improvements, 20%. These are the free responses, by the way. Kayak, paddleboard access, parking improvement, trash management, wake issues, no wake zones, safety, security measures, restrooms, facilities, maintaining natural beauty environments. You see a lot of overlap there in those free text responses. Not going to go into the full every survey result, but staff has made 12 recommendations for city council. The first is to prioritize dock and ramp repairs improvements as the most urgent need. The second is including a dedicated kayak paddleboard launch area in the master plan. Third is consider creating separate areas for fishing, crabbing to reduce user conflicts. 4 is improving parking layout and capacity while maintaining the natural character of the area. 5 is enhancing safety measures through improved lighting, security cameras, and coordination with local law enforcement. 6 is implementing better trash management systems and consider adding recycling facilities. 7 is adding basic amenities such as benches and considering the feasibility of restroom facilities. Exploring traffic calming measures on nearby roads to address speeding concerns. Maintaining a balance between improvements and preserving the natural environment, including minimizing light pollution. Considering implementation of a no wake zone near the landing to protect the dock and improve safety. Ensuring the master plan addresses the needs of both frequent users, boaters, kayakers, and fishermen, and those who enjoy the landing for its views and recreational value. And last is conducting further community engagement throughout the master planning process to refine specific design elements and priorities. Now, I recognize that some of these things we don't have any control over, such as the no wake zone. We can influence state officials. And some of these things wouldn't be necessarily included in a scope for services, such as the traffic calming measures, law enforcement services. Some things we've already begun working on, such as adding additional benches and looking at the lighting. Is there anything in this that's come to your attention during this survey process or those recommendations that you feel we do not need to discuss in our scope of services for this master planning process, or is there anything that we have left out?
Well, I'll just say first, I was excited to see that about 132 of the survey respondents lived in Pigeon Point. So I think that helps us be more accurate in our master plan as far as accommodating the needs and the wishes for the individuals that live in that neighborhood. Sorry. In regards to the recommendations, I'll say it looked like primary uses 2 and 3, launching and recovering kayaks or other recreational vessels, 43%, launching and recovering motorized boats, 42%. And I believe that DNR launches here about 15 to 20% of the time that they put in the water. So I would just like to make sure that as we move forward with the master plan, if we're going to enhance and improve to accommodate more launching, that we also factor in or work with DNR to make sure that that their needs are accommodated as well in regards to emergency response.
Yes, sir.
I think this master plan really covers it well. Am I loud enough? Okay. So I drove around Pigeon Point today, and anytime I'd see somebody out, I'd stop and just ask them, how are things going? Almost every time I was hearing about the boat landing, the crabbing docks, things on that nature. Everybody is pretty much right on target. So, I mean, it's just a random survey, just stopping people. And I think this is pretty much right on target from what I was getting. So I very much like this master plan.
If we do design build, what's the procurement process for that? I mean, you can't sole source it. I think, Paul, you were saying we could use O'Quinn and all that. I don't think you can do that.
It would have to be bid out just like any other project. The difference is when you do those, you don't have to do the bidding between the design and the construction, but the whole project itself would have to be bid out.
Right.
And the individuals in that, individuals have to go through the same procurement requirements with the bidding process, but they would be doing the design build as the bidding process.
That's correct. Yes, sir. So rather than this just being a master plan, request for proposals, it would be a request for proposals for both a master plan and construction of the final project.
Will that include extending out the landing itself? Because I know in the old days when I'd go there, there was a drop off. It was pretty rough.
All of that would be assessed, and that was noted as a concern. We would want a full assessment of both the boat ramp and then a dock that's not a lake dock.
You may need a breakwater or something because the current rips through there.
Yes, sir. Anything else from council?
Anything else?
Mr. Mayor, do you want to go through all of these deep dives and then do public comment, or would you like to allow people to comment on their individual projects?
Anybody have a comment on the, Paul? Might as well do it.
Again, I'm Paul Trask, speaking simply on my own, not as a member of the Planning Commission. I'm a frequent user of many boat landings, most often Port Royal, Battery Creek, and Buddy and Zoo down on St. Helena Island. But I'd love to use Pigeon Point. It's a great location. It's a small landing, as you know, but so is Factory Creek. That's just been redone a couple of years ago. A very limited parking area there, just like we've got with Pigeon Point. One thing on the recommended list, and I hate to bend over like this, but I'm going to pick this thing up. Don't put any trash cans down there. Don't do it. You go down to Station Creek and you got trash cans that are literally overflowing. It's a garbage dump. It's horrible. Don't do it. You got a single lane facility. I encourage you to use this design build opportunity may not fit precisely with your procurement, which is why I suggest that procurement policies be studied and examined very closely going forward, years going forward. You need someone that builds docks, that has a lot of experience. You don't necessarily need an engineer that's going to go down there. I don't think you need to spend $80,000. You need to, again, this is a metaphor. You need to call Duncan O'Quinn. You need to get him to go down there. You need to pay him $10,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is, and let him tell you what needs to be done. And then you can confirm that, and then you can bid it out. You have a limited amount of electrical, it seems to me. You don't need to put multiple light posts. You need to put some light posts. Yes, we need to have a dock that people that want to kayak and so forth. Maybe you need an L. You don't ever need to build a straight ramp. Then you got people trying to recover and put in on a single lane ramp and it doesn't work. So you need an L-shaped dock where you can launch, pull the wife can hold the line and you can put the trailer away and then go get in the boat and go away while someone else comes in. You need another little dock where folks in that neighborhood and folks from anywhere can go down there and put a crab line in the water. It needs to be on the other side of the ramp. Maybe this time the dock needs to be on the left side, maybe, and go down the creek a little bit, maybe. That just is a judgment call for someone that knows more about it than me. Traffic calming devices, you can put some humps in the road, that's fine. But I wouldn't overcomplicate this. Yes, you want people to launch their boats. It's a single lane facility. It's got limited parking. Keep it as such, but just make it function properly. Put a nice L-shaped dock on it and put in a crabbing dock and let's get it done. This is a situation where this city can see a problem that needs to be corrected, can come up with the money to do it, and can get it done and get it done before next summer. And that's what I encourage you to do. And let's make this situation a showpiece, not only for the landing itself, but for the process. And let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Ms. Merrill?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Judy?
Good evening.
I'm Kay Merrill, 813 Augusta Place, and I live in that wonderful neighborhood. And I take exception to your comment about trash cans. And I'll speak. There are already trash cans at the boat landing. They are used regularly. Every once in a while, I'll get an email from somebody saying the trash cans haven't been emptied, but Nate can tell you, we do a great job. They do a great job. We do a great job. The users of the boat landing do a great job. I have seen people come off their boats, clean up their trash, put it in those trash bins, and they are picked up on a regular basis. I'm not so sure about recycling. I see that could be an issue, but I don't know about recycling, but I can tell you that trash cans are very much needed. The community loves that facility, and we really want to have it back in operation as quickly as we can. The one caution is that I want you to remember that it's very much located in a residential area, and so we want to keep the residential ambiance. There are already 2 traffic calming, whatever you call those things, speed bumps, whatever. I don't know that there are any more necessary, but in any event, trash cans, Mr. Trask. Thank you.
Paul? No. Okay. This about trash?
Well, actually, I'm going to reiterate on that, but no bathrooms. No bathrooms. And so the reason I say no trash cans is people just come and dump their trash. I mean, they're just going to dump everything. And it's not often, in my view, that people are just going to dump their trash if there's no trash can. And I will tell you, if you go to Station Creek Landing, I mean, it is really horrible. It's dreadful, the situation with those trash cans. So before you make a decision on that, I mean, you can always add a trash can. But my suggestion would be go forward without the trash cans, see how it goes. And if you're curious about it, hop in the car, ride down past the Sanders farm, go to that Buddy and Zoo Landing and look at the trash can and you'll see what I'm talking about. Thank you.
I don't think the county picks up over there, though. Yeah. We're on top
In
of it.
defense, I think you're looking your apples and oranges. Because
Exactly.
that neighborhood is not going to let the trash cans be obtrusive. And by the way, there is a crabbing dock already on the Pinckney Park right adjacent to it. And it's in very good shape, so.
There is so much more pride in that neighborhood than there would be at Station Creek. So, I mean, they're going to take care of those trash cans. Nate, he is fantastic with his crew. I have no doubt that there's not going to be a problem.
Somebody will be out there
The
volunteering.
crabbing dock was at your house.
I do want to thank Kay Merrill, because without her, I don't think we would have had the response that we got on this survey. She did a great job of getting that information out to the neighborhood. So before we move on from Pigeon Point, is there anything else from council? Any other recommendations? Are you good with us moving forward as is?
Yep.
We believe this process worked.
Oh, yeah.
This one? Okay. All right, the next project is, I don't even know why I'm changing this part, is the Duke Streetscape and Stormwater Project. We don't have a lot to add to what was discussed at the community meeting earlier this month, but we wanted to present to council as a whole the same presentation, give you an update about where we're looking at on things and the phasing options that Davis and Floyd have come up with thus far. We have Brian Webb and Mike Horton from Davis and Floyd online. And if they are ready to share their screen, I will turn this portion of the presentation over to them.
Are they on?
I think so.
There we
Yes,
go.
sir. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, good evening, Mayor and members of council, and thank you for allowing us to present this evening. As JJ said, we did have a meeting a couple weeks ago, and this is basically a summary of what we have found. But I did want to go through basically the project limits that we looked at, the results of our preliminary drainage analysis, some potential phasing strategies. We also did an opinion of probable construction cost, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that may be asked. So the study area that we looked at was Duke Street, basically between Bladen Street and Riva Road. We did look at the entire
Brian, can I
water.
stop you for
Yes, sir.
just
Go
a
ahead.
second? Can you share your screen? All we're seeing is your name.
Apologize for that. I thought I was sharing. Give me just 1 second.
If not, we can switch back over to the PowerPoint. There you go.
Got it.
Is that working?
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I'll let's see. Sorry, now my controls aren't working. Apologies, I think my computer just locked up.
Brian, I have your presentation from the community meeting. If you want to tell me
Okay.
which
Sure.
parts, we can share that on the screen and then
Yeah,
you can,
absolutely.
you just tell me when you need to move and I'll step back up here and move it.
Okay, thank you. We'll do that.
All right. You see that, Brian? Your agenda?
Uh, Jet, no, sir. Okay, got it now. Yes, sir. So like I was mentioning, we will go through basically the same presentation that we did a few weeks ago for staff. Next slide. The study area for the project is Bladen Street to Rebo Road, which is highlighted in sort of the orange box there in the middle of the screen. Next slide. We did look at the drainage basin for the entire area. Duke Street's kind of in the middle of that slide there. And you can see by the colors with the heat map, it shows different elevations. The reds and greens or the reds are the higher elevations, the greens are the lower elevations. So Duke Street kind of runs a high point through the drainage basin there, at least our segment of Duke Street that we're looking at. Basically, the water drains off to the northwest and also to the south, depending on which side of the street you're on. So that was our kind of the basis of our findings there. The next slide, please. Also took a look at the existing drainage network. This was based on GIS data and some other records that we were able to find. And basically, what we discovered is that the drainage network is mostly okay in terms of capacity. So we did think that it is possible to structure the phasing of the project really any way council may wish to do it. We do recommend doing whole block segments since we're doing a streetscape component to this as well. So the phases you see there, A, B, and C, are not intended to convey any priority or ranking. They're really just more geographic references. Phase A is the 1600 block. We do recommend replacement of a metal drainage pipe that's under the road there. We also recommend adding drainage pipe to the 1700 block, which is shown in red. And then the, I guess, 1800 block, the long block phase C, really doesn't need any additional drainage improvements. And so from a drainage standpoint, we have the ability to phase the project however you may wish. From a streetscape project, we would recommend, or streetscape component, we recommend doing whole blocks at a time. There may be some value since phases A and B both require underground improvements. There may be some value in combining those two segments so you get all the underground work done at one time. But that's an option that the city could consider or not consider, as it may be. Next slide. We did take a look at possible construction cost. Basically, phases A and B are roughly the same length, about 400 feet or so, give or take, linear feet. And we're estimating around $300,000 per block for that. Phase C is just a longer distance, so the cost is more, but is proportional to phases A and B. So if the entire project was looked at, we're looking at 1.6 million, give or take, for construction. You know, if it was split into smaller pieces, it'd just be the sum of the smaller pieces there. Next slide, please. Questions or any additional information we could offer?
Got one question.
Yes,
If
sir.
they if phase A and phase B were done at the same time, you said there may be some cost, savings. Would that be anything less than 600 or it would still be 600?
It would still be 600. The benefit would be that you get all the underground improvements done at one time. So you would save, additional mobilization. You'd save having to do the project in multiple or split amongst multiple projects, but it'd still be around the 600 total. The savings, I guess, would be if you bid it out as two separate projects, you're likely to be above the 600 threshold because of you're paying for mobilization twice, you're paying for a lot of work two times really, rather than one time.
Plus there's interruption for the people who live.
Thank you.
Hey, pardon me, this is Councilman Mitchell. Could you say again what is needed to be done in Phase C, that portion from Haymar to Rebar Road?
Yes, sir. So phase C is really just a streetscape component. We would do the installation of the curb and gutter, basically above ground improvements, if you will. We don't see that any drainage improvements would need to be made through there as far as adding new pipe or that sort of thing. We'd basically be maintaining what's already there from a drainage standpoint and just doing the above ground work with the streetscape, the parking, the curb and gutter, the lighting, that sort of thing.
And, pardon me, I think that Phase A is where the dip in the road is and where the neighbors have been really concerned about what's going on. So however we do Phase A, Phase B, I think we should just keep the focus on making sure that area that floods and Phase A be taken care of.
Brian, have y'all had a chance? I know we hadn't been much time in between meetings, but we discussed looking at the dip and taking into considerations for possibly addressing that. I know the original assessment did not. Have y'all had a chance to look at that at all?
Not in great detail, no, but the concepts are shown here basically maintain the dip, if you will, so as to minimize impacts to or right of way or adding additional fill through there that may cause some unintended consequences. But that's certainly something that we could look into further if that's something that the city preferred.
So I'm sorry. So the drainage fixing that would happen in Phase A, would that eliminate the possibility of the flooding between Bladen and Adventure where the dip is?
We believe so. Yes, sir. Mike, I don't know if you're able to speak or not, but if I'm saying something wrong, please jump in there. But yes, we believe that these improvements would address the drainage concerns through there.
That is correct.
And Councilman Mitchell, there was an issue brought up by a resident about the back alley. I apologize, I can't
Princess.
remember. Princess, that's correct, Princess. And Nate and his public works crew are working to address that, and they believe they have a solution, and that would not affect the work being done here. That we believe we can do that portion in-house.
Okay.
In these figures, the estimated construction cost for, say, Phase A, 300,000, is that taking into account the replacement of the pipes and the streetscape? Or is it just the construction of replacing the pipes?
It would be both, but it assumes that the roadway dip, if you will, would basically remain. I mean, we would do some minor paving improvements through there, that sort of thing with the curb and gutter, but we would not be eliminating the dip, if you will. If that's something that is desired, we could certainly look into that, but it would add to this.
I think it is desired from what I'm understanding, listening to the neighbors and everything. I believe eliminating the dip would be a very desired result.
It is aesthetically not pleasing.
Sure.
Just looking at it, maybe that should be a part of the streetscape also, eliminate that dip.
Yeah.
Did you find that the dip factored into the drainage at all, or would it simply be an aesthetic thing to eliminate the dip?
We believe it'd be more of an aesthetic thing to eliminate the dip. I think from a drainage standpoint, upgrading the pipes through there and doing, you know, the clean outs and those sort of things would address the drainage needs. Elimination of the dip would really be more.
Let me ask the question one other way, and I won't ask again on this, but would eliminating the dip create any negatives in terms of drainage?
No, sir, it wouldn't create any negatives in terms of drainage, but it could create negatives in terms of impacts to the surrounding properties. You know, we'd be looking at bringing in some sort of fill material, possibly even retaining walls, that sort of thing to build up the roadway that 2 or 3 feet or so that it's dipping now. So that would be where the impacts occur. It's really just how to add that much dirt or material and then, you know, keep it in a fashion that's not going to impact the surrounding homes.
How much will eliminating the dip, how much will that add to the cost, do you think?
I would have to look at it a little bit more. A lot of that's going to depend on what sort of, you know, if we need walls and what type of walls, how long are the walls, that sort of thing. That would all factor into the cost.
Thank you.
The council, the questions that we had for council today regarding this project was one, addressing the dip that we want to go ahead and move forward with. A plan showing what that would look like that we can bring back to the neighborhood to get their input on before bringing a finalized design option to council. And 2, wanted to confirm that we want to focus on phase A, the 1600 block, and then if we can also incorporate phase B financially, phase A and phase B, to potentially save some money on that stormwater pipe, but that phase C was the lowest of the priorities.
Well, I think we definitely ought to combine phase A and B. As far as the dip is concerned, I think we have some neighbors that might want to talk to that and kind of leave it up to them.
You want to open it to public comment at this
Yes.
point?
Ms. Augusta? Paul, then I'll get you next.
Hi, Daryl and Augusta, 1600 block of Duke Street. We do have a dip problem and a drainage problem, and most recently during Debbie, of course. Now, it's not as bad as it was. Nate could probably tell us what happened with clean out or whatever that's made it better, but it's still there. So not being an engineer, I don't know if we need to keep pursuing the dip or not, or because that's where it all collects. And it goes quicker now, but it's still there. The other thing about Princess I just wanted to bring up, and thanks for remembering, we've been talking about that for 2 or 3 years. So maybe Nate, you and your team could meet with us on property again and see what the fix is, because we've spent some money, just the neighborhood, doing our own thing. So maybe we could put that in that bucket. Did I forget anything, Duke Street? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Water always finds the lowest spot. Anything else? Oh, Paul, excuse me, go ahead.
Okay, so this whole situation came out of the dip, out of the drainage problem. The drainage problem largely has gone away. I've told you that before. The drainage problem was quite severe. Down Bladen Street, it's backing up all over the place. Not nearly as bad. The dip is a bit of an issue. I don't know if we have to engineer walls to bring it up. I mean, the grade goes up on either side of the street. The street can probably be raised with just an inlet at grade on the new street that drops straight down into the pipe. Doesn't seem to be, you know, a major engineering problem to me. But it doesn't have to be brought perhaps full level, can still perhaps have a little dip, so it doesn't in affect the existing grade on either side of the road. Now, I know that we bought, I'm gonna call it a roto-rooter truck. I don't know what it's properly called, but I think we spent in the ARPA money $120,000, if I recall. And I think that was a great purchase, great expenditure of ARPA money. We need that device. We need to use it, as the case may be, all over the city. And I'm going to tell you that that is going to solve 90% of the drainage problems. All these engineering works and multi-million-dollar expenditures of money, they're not going to make a substantial difference over and above what we experienced a few weeks ago in that storm. And I rode around this city and we didn't have any substantial drainage problem. Yes, there's a little water on King Street in the Point, but as Conway Ivy will tell you, it goes away. He lives right there. And I stood there and I made a little video. And yes, indeed, it goes right in the drain and goes right in the pond and it goes away. Same thing exists on Duke Street. There's no problem on Bladen Street. There's no problem in Higginsville. There's no problem. And I told you this months ago when the city was about to engage Davis and Floyd on this study. And I want to ask a business question. I'd like either the gentleman at Davis and Floyd or someone at the city, how much have we spent to prepare this little study and this potential solution out of the $400,000 that we've allocated, much of which would have actually fixed the problem. We don't have a problem elsewhere. So how much of the engineering money is expended thus far, and do we need to spend the rest of it? That's my question. Can anyone tell us, do the engineers know how much we've spent thus far? Well, I'm going to guess that we haven't spent $400,000 to come up with this result. This is what? I don't know, this is some tens of thousands of dollars of expenditure, which is exactly the approach on a design building. We identify, design build, we identify the problem. We got a problem on Duke Street. We've got a streetscape problem. We need to do a specific design on that. Now, I don't mean to offend these gentlemen, but when they came and first made their presentation, they didn't even have the outfalls at the end of Bladen, in front of the school, and the one at Wilmington. Now, I think the local guys that work for them knew that, but they didn't bring the local guys in, the guys that actually do the drawing. So I'm fussing at them just a little bit. I like Davis and Floyd, I respect them, and I like their local staff very much. But this city, we have survived this city for, I don't know how many hundred years. How old is this city? Decades and decades and decades and decades of councils and mayors and staff who preceded you have been able to make a judgment on a problem and fix the problem without hiring consultants to tell them every single thing that they needed to do. Every time we turn around, we've got a study to tell us what to do on the arsenal wall. We've budgeted $80,000 to tell us what we need to do on the boat landing. We're spending $400,000 with Davis and Floyd to tell us about a problem in the Northwest Quadrant in Higginsville that largely does not exist. And I'm sick of it. And I'm not going to talk about it anymore, but I do have the expectation that this council is going to start paying attention to that and start being a little bit better steward of our tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trask. Anyone else? We got a whole crew. All right, Dan.
I'm Dan Blackman from 1010 Duke Street, and I drive that every day several times. It's not a big problem, but it is a problem. And they can raise that roadway sufficient to solve the dip let's say, without affecting the neighbors. You can see it. You can go down there and see. You can make your own judgment. You don't need an engineer to tell you, don't raise it 3 feet because it'll spill out on the neighbors, but raise it 1.5 feet or something like that. My issue is this. This is the second project done by this engineering firm in which options were not given until the public raised their hand and yelled. King Street, there were no options given by the engineering firm until the public raised the issue. On this Duke Street, the same thing. Options were not given by the engineering firm. I don't know whose court that ball falls in, whether it's us not asking the engineers for options, or is it the engineers not giving us options, just doing what they thought should be done? But that's a problem. This is a public facility that we're talking about. We should have options so that you can make choices and so that we can make choices. So I urge you in your next RFP or dealing with the engineering or consultants, tell them we want options. Oh, yeah, we don't know that. They haven't presented any other options. Like one option that was mentioned, and I've done some talking to these engineers, so I know why I think I know why they didn't do it, was why isn't the drainage that's affecting 1600, why isn't it going down Bladen? We haven't answered that question. Even today, you don't know why. But that would have been another option, to take that little section and run it down Bladen, right down the outfall on Bladen. Just another aspect of it where the engineers are not giving you options. And I would urge you to make sure that we ask for those when we hire people. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Farley?
Ann Farrelly again, Oak Haven Street. I'm just confused about the estimate. He said it was proportional from Phase A to Phase B to Phase C, but Phase A and B are enormously more complicated with pipes and everything, and the other is just streetscape. Why is that? I know it's 3 times as big, but why is it 3 times as expensive when there's
Longer
no
distance.
drainage?
Longer distance.
I know, but it's proportional. So it's still.
It's kind of what I
way
was asking the
over-
question for, because it looked the same to me, is it
Yeah,
looked
it's
like
way
it was,
over-
right, if you were factoring in replacing the pipes into
Right.
the first 2 phases, then it seems like either C would have been exponentially less, or the others would have been more expensive.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to get to that second part of the question, but thanks for starting it.
Yes, Ms. Rogers. I was going to tell you, next time you can sit up front instead of getting away from the preacher. That way you'd hear.
I don't know when I've had such a good chuckle, sitting there listening to Mr. Trask. Clayton Cooler would be so proud of you, Paul. So few people in this room, and there are few people in this room actually, would remember Clayton Cooler, who was Director of Public Works for years.
50
You
years.
didn't need any engineers. Clayton Cooler knew the answer to everything in town when it
50
came to
years.
pipes and stuff. So I just wanted to say, if you'd like to take on Clayton Cooler's, I don't know anything about the Department of Public Works right now, but I did have a great chuckle about that. And I also wanted to say, I failed to say that I heard every word that Scott Marshall said also, because he was close to the mic. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once, going twice? JJ, you got more?
Does council have any further questions for staff for guidance on this project?
Let's explore the dip. Sounds like that's included.
Brian, anything further from Davis and Floyd on Duke Street?
Mr. Augusta, you have a comment?
No, sir, nothing further from us. Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Christopher Augusta. I live at 1606 Duke Street, kind of like where the whole problem area is. But the thing that, that we haven't heard yet and anything, and I know we've had some really great meetings and some great progress in how the project's gonna go. When is it gonna go? Do we have any idea of timelines at this point, or is that still too far away? And that's basically my only question.
I think it's finding the funding.
Yeah, we do not have an update on the timeline. This was addressed at the public meeting. Again, a lot of this is a regurgitation from council. We wanted your guidance on, do we look at taking the dip out? And before we went any further with the options presented by Davis and Floyd, did council have anything they wanted us to change? Brian, do y'all have anything regarding Councilman Scoletti's questions about the pricing between Phase A, Phase B, and Phase C, with the piping being in Phase A and B?
Yes, sir. I can hopefully help explain that a little bit better. The pipes, well, let me back up. With the streetscape work, a lot of the ground's going to be disturbed. We're going to have to remove materials to install the parking areas, remove materials to install curb and gutter. So adding in the pipe to already disturbed ground really doesn't move the needle that much in terms of cost. And I think that's maybe where some of the confusion is in terms of how A and B compare to C, is that, A and B are relatively short blocks. They're 400 feet, give or take. We're only putting in pipe on one side of the road, whereas Phase C is a much longer section, and the pipe is, I won't say it's incidental, but in some ways it is to the other items of work that are being proposed, with the streetscape component, with the curb and gutter, with the parking areas, the street lighting, that sort of thing.
Any additional questions or guidance from council?
Anything else from council?
So in terms of guidance, my suggestion would be that we raise the street where the dip is sufficiently. And I realize this is aesthetics primarily, but I think it would be significant long-term. But, as Paul and others has mentioned, make sure we don't do it to the point that we create another problem with the existing topography on the left and right sides.
Yeah, and to answer Mr. Augusta, how much time is it going to take to engineer this little dip and then include that in the project? And then how much further in terms of design? And then before we can go to construction, we also have to find the funding.
I apologize, I don't have the timeline directly in front of me. I was looking for the email where we sent that to the neighborhood association, but we are still within that timeline. Brian, do you have that handy? And then the big question is funding.
I don't have a definitive timeline, no, but I will say we have already done the survey that's needed. We've done the geotechnical work, which is needed. And we have done the wetland delineation, which there are no wetlands, fortunately. So that's going to save us a little bit on the permitting side. But we've already done a lot of the upfront work, or kind of behind the scenes work, if you will. So we're ready to move forward with whatever phasing components the city may want to do, whether that's one block or two or all three. And certainly the profile of the road can be adjusted, as was discussed. I might have misspoke when I said we have to install walls. I was just saying this one thing, depending on the height of how much we try to fill there, that could be a consideration, but certainly we could scale it down to avoid that. Maybe just fill in part of the dip, if you will, instead of all of the dip. So all those things are on the table. We just need to work with you and council as, to whatever phasing they may want to do, and to what extent we make those improvements profile wise.
The council, what I'm hearing is we want to focus on Phase A, Phase B if we can, combine the two realistically. Um, and then addressing the dip in the road. And then also, we will set up an additional neighborhood meeting, once Nate and his guys kind of finish up recovering from the storm mode, to address the Princess Lane. And then Phase C would be the last priority here as far as seeking out funding. Then the next steps, once that is designed and we have some visuals to bring back to the community, we would do an additional community meeting, get any additional input, questions, concerns from the community before presenting a final design to the council, ideally. Is there anything you would like to see done differently or any questions you have?
I think you covered it.
All right. Brian, thank you for jumping on. Mike, if you want to stay on for the King Street downtown discussion, it's primarily funding related, but just in case anybody has any engineering related questions, you're welcome to stay on with us.
Happy to, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, any further discussion on the Duke Street project? Okay. Moving into the Point downtown stormwater projects, this discussion is primarily related to funding. In your memorandum on page 97 of the agenda, we have a breakdown of the original grant budgets for these projects. And just a reminder that there are 4 projects that came out of a single study. King Street's funded by a Rural Infrastructure Authority grant that is passed down money from ARPA. The Port Republic and Charles Craven projects are funded by the South Carolina Office of Resiliency, and South Carolina Office of Resiliency is actually managing those projects. Bayard Street is an EPA grant, and it is funded or managed by the city. King Street and Bayard Street, the engineers of record on those projects are Davis and Floyd. Port Republic and Charles Craven, the SCORE projects, SCORE chose to use McCormick Taylor for those, but all of the engineers and the project managers for the various agencies have been coordinating together. So jumping into King Street first, to give council a little bit of an update. We all know the project faced significant scrutiny for both the cost and the pump station above ground structures. When I was last in front of you discussing this project, we walked away with a rescoping assignment with Davis and Floyd and the community group known as the Drain Gang. The same day we held the Duke Street public meeting, that earlier in the day, we held a meeting with the Drain Gang and the engineers. And I think we made a lot of progress on a design that could be acceptable to the community that both adds resiliency and the potential for even greater resiliency while maintaining as small a footprint as possible. Basically, the collection and conveyance system is currently designed, and then an outfall of approximately 2 times the size of the one that is there. We walked away from that meeting with Davis and Floyd working to do some scoping for various parts of the conversation, things that were presented by the various citizens. And our plan is to reconvene with the Drain Gang sometime in the next couple of weeks to go over that modeling to make sure that we're not creating any hazards or issues in one single location around the King Street retention pond, and to provide some visuals of what this project could potentially look like. Again, I think it was a good meeting. Scott was present, Carrie Gorsuch from our office was present, Mike from Davis and Floyd was present, and then 5 or 6 members of the Point community were present, and it was a very cordial conversation. I think everybody was working towards the same same results. So a system that has the potential to expand even further as far as resiliency goes, but one that does not have the significant impacts to the community that the above ground structures or the original outfall design would have. The Port Republic, Charles Craven, and Bayard Street projects are all moving along approximately the 90% design stage. August 1st, we held a public input meeting here. This was one of several public input meetings that SCORE hosted here on site with the city. We've been meeting with various business owners and property owners within the area. We actually had a Teams meeting with Mr. Trask, Graham Trask, the other day, the project engineer, Jason Hetrick, and I. We've met with several other business owners. Those projects are coming along. The biggest issue with those projects is logistically coordinating them for construction to make sure we don't have those desperate impacts to the downtown economy that Mr. Trask referenced earlier. And the general outline is that the projects are going to be completed in a very fast timeline for this type of project because of the ARPA funding and the state managed grants on that, which they are confident the firms that they've worked with in the past and continue to work with will be able to meet those timelines, but also taking that in a block by block approach so that they're not completely shutting down roads. There will be a DOT plan, community input plans on that. The biggest concern overall, not just logistically though, is that this grant or these grants were for approximately $7.5 million. That was the project cost estimates a couple of years ago when these projects were initially scoped. The current cost estimates that SCORE provided us with are approximately $15 million, and they based those on actual construction projects they are engaging in all across the state that they manage. That's a significant difference, more than double or close to double the original cost. They are confident that they can provide us with some additional grant funding, but they don't know exactly how much. And with the rescoping of the King Street project, we know we were taking the pump station out, which was estimated to be approximately $6 million of the $9 million. So we knew we would have some funding potentially left over. Our conversations with RIA and SCORE have been that there are several ways in which they believe funding from the King Street project could be reallocated to these other drainage projects to cover any additional costs, partial up to the full amount. There's different logistics of how they would go about it. It would be something they would primarily do on their end as far as the paperwork goes, but they need to know if that is the approach we want to take as soon as possible, because they have to get that done before the end of the year so that we can get this before the end of September so that we can get this bid out and under contract. So staff's recommendations on the King Street project are that we continue to meet with the community stakeholders to, one, determine if the King Street stormwater project is an immediate community priority based on the continuous feedback of a perceived lack of substantial flooding. We believe it is still a priority. The question is it an immediate priority? Continue with Davis and Floyd engineering team. As you all know, Mr. Ivy has made another offer to fund a independent study by ICE. We have spoken with ICE. We've spoken with RIA, SCORE. McCormick Taylor has been involved in these projects. The original engineer who did the underlying study did work for Andrews Engineering, which is now Davis and Floyd. However, he's no longer employed there. He's not involved in the project. We have a very competent engineering team with Davis and Floyd that I think has engaged in good conversations with the community and we're very close to reaching a design that works for the community and our long-term vision for the city. With all of those involvements, there was an issue with the underlying study. I believe McCormick Taylor would have said something, RIA would have spoken up, SCORE would have gotten involved. I don't believe there's an issue with the underlying study that needs to be addressed. So our recommendation was be that we continue proceeding as planned and politely decline Mr. Ivy's offer. He is a part of the Drain Gang. He has been a part of the communications, and he will continue to be a part of the communications moving forward. We recommend continuing to locally fund the King Street project redesign, since there's been continuous progress with the engineering team and community representatives in reaching an agreed upon design for the collection and conveyance system and the outfall improvements. We also recommend that we apply to reallocate all or a majority of the King Street RAA grant to the other downtown stormwater projects to uncover these increased cost estimates, and then potentially pursue other funding sources for construction of the King Street project once finally designed. Ideally, this current design path that we're on would result in a project $2 to $3 million, and we could continue with the existing grant funding while reallocating sufficient grant funding to cover the lack of funding on the other projects. In addition to that question, we're also looking at a timeline here. I've said from the very beginning, since jumping into capital projects, Scott has said it over and over again, our goal is to get the right projects in the right communities at the right time. We're not going to allow the grant funding timeline to drive the project without taking into consideration the community needs. So if the rescoping of this project jeopardizes the grant funding, as was explained earlier, or if the timeline cannot be accomplished under the grant funding amounts, it's still our recommendation that we finish this design. We can find grant funding. We can find funding for a $2 or $3 million project if the community still wants that moving forward. But we are very close to having a design that has had significant community input. So I'm not saying walk away from the King Street project altogether, but there is that possibility that the grant funding won't be able to complete this project. And we're at a crucial time where we need to begin the process of reallocating the funding. We don't have to have an exact amount right now, and we may not need the full amount, but we need to get that ball rolling if that is the direction council wants us to go. A recommendation for the remainder of the projects, by the way, Baird Street remains on budget, on time, so it's really not a concern here, but.
You know when that's going to start?
What's that?
You know when it's going to start?
It would go out for bid at the same time as the other projects, end of this year. Continue and complete the design, permitting, and bid process through SCORE. Apply to reallocate all or a portion of the King Street project funding to these projects as discussed with Skip and RIA. And if necessary, due to funding or time constraints, there's also the consideration that we may need to phase that project if for some reason, we don't think that's the case at this point, but that's always a concern, is we have all these plans and permitting done. Worst case scenario, if we can't get all of the funding to it or something happens to the timeline, we move to a phased approach with the construction. So before we have the public get up and comment and council ask me any further questions, what we really need to know on these projects is council okay with us continuing to work with RIA and Skip in pursuing reallocation of an appropriate amount of funding from the King Street project to these other projects? And two, if it comes down to it, do we reallocate all of the funding from the King Street project if necessary. And of course, we would not do that without coming back in front of council, but I want y'all to have that in mind. So with that, I'll turn it over to all of you for questions,
Comments?
comments.
Yes, I am in favor of reallocating. I would like to give you afterwards the name of a resident on let's see. I'm sorry, on Port Republic Street, who is very, very unhappy with the project. Maybe you can talk to her about it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm in favor of moving forward with reallocating and then, with the understanding that you would come back to us. Should this be the case, I would be potentially in favor of reallocating all of the King Street. But I would want us to also prioritize these projects just in case we're only able to get to, not all of them, because this estimate was just so much more than originally anticipated. We can only allocate so much before we're just out of grant funding. So I think really understanding which ones are more of a priority would be important, should there need to be a next step of phasing it for a couple of years.
Yes, sir. And that has been a discussion of if we have to take the phasing approach, or if we are not able to allocate the appropriate amount of funding with them matching funds, that I would need a full memorandum from the engineers based on what they believe the project needs are, and we would have to bring that back to council for discussion with public input.
You don't have much time, but I'm in favor of the reallocation as well, so sooner you can find out, the better.
So just to pile on, yeah, it just makes sense to reallocate from King Street as necessary. And as Josh mentioned, a prioritization should be implemented so that we're focusing on which is more critical in case we don't have enough to do it all.
Yes, sir.
I concur, and but I do want the importance of prioritization and not undoing what we've done already.
Absolutely. I want to emphasize that pulling the complete funding for King Street would be the absolute last resort. I think we're very close to a resolution that the entire community will be happy with. And as far as the other projects go, the phasing or prioritizing one over the other is a last resort. I don't think we're there yet. SCORE doesn't think we're there yet, but I'm trying to be as transparent with council as possible because we are under the gun when it comes to the timeline here. Mike, if you're still on, do you have anything from an engineering perspective that you feel you need to share with council or would be helpful?
No, sir, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
JJ, one last thing. I think this couple, is that your wife? Okay, I know we heard from you last time. I'm sorry, I cannot remember your name. Did we work with, I'm sorry? Whites? Did we work with the Whites to see if there was a chance that we could resolve their issue?
I made a note to reach out to them just now.
Okay.
But we did not, between the last meeting and this meeting, we noted that they do have flooding issues and that they've seen issues, but unless Nate has had contact with them, I have not. Okay.
Okay, so, but we will make sure we get with them. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Public comment?
Yes. Any public comment?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Trask.
Graham Trask, 1211 Bay Street. JJ, I'm a little confused on the prioritization. I must have missed the projects that we're trading off. Are you saying, can you just tell me the projects that the money, if it was shifted from King Street, would be allocated to?
It would be allocated to the Port Republic and Charles Craven projects. I believe what we're talking about as far as prioritization is if we had to move to a phasing option because we didn't have the full funding or could not meet the timeline, or if we could not, if say we went to apply the King Street funding and we were only able to fund part of the projects, or if the funding, for some reason at the state level, they come back and say, actually, you know what, we were wrong, we can't reallocate
Right.
this. At that point, we would have to prioritize
Okay.
between Port Republic and Charles Craven and the phasing.
And you're asserting that all this needs to be worked through by the end of September?
If we are going to proceed with the ARPA funds, grant funding from the state, yeah, that is the timeline.
Okay, I think there are a couple of things. I mean, one is, I don't know how many people you've talked with downtown. I just learned about this recently. It is going to be a major disruption, as you know. And so talking with more people like the woman that Neil suggested, I think is important. I think the other thing, which again, I asked for, and I hope that you and city council will consider, is there an alternative whereby all the work that's along Charles Street and Craven Street, no work can be done along those streets, and instead the capacity of pipes be increased in the waterfront park and a floodgate be put there? I know your team is working on that, but I think that is something that really needs to be explored.
Yeah, Jason is looking into that. Jason Hetrick with McCormick Taylor, but I don't have any update at this point.
Sure. All right, that's it. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Trask. Anyone else? JJ, you can finish this off.
I apologize. I'm not used to talking about King Street and not having public comments. A pleasant surprise. The last project we wanted to do a deep dive on is Southside Park, and I'm actually going to pull up. I apologize if you have the agenda packet. We provided you with the progress update report number 12. Well, Friday afternoon, we received project report update number 13. So I'm going to go to our public portal, pull up report 13. This is what it would look like to the public. I apologize that it's not larger. I'm trying to figure out how to download. It shows a download option when I pull it up on my computer. Well, all right, we will address that. But as everybody, I believe, knows, we had some playground sidewalk forms that were not acceptable. They poured sidewalk, and our inspectors called it. Staff went out, observed it. We said, we're not accepting this work product. The construction firm actually ended up letting that subcontractor go, and they have fixed that issue now. Because we didn't accept it, that's not a cost to us. As of right now, we are still on schedule, although there may be some delays coming down the pipeline because of the amount of rain we had. Work to occur in the next couple of weeks. They're going to continue and finish up the sidewalks, which they were doing this week, finishing the irrigation installation, continuing with the pavilion, installing the playground equipment and the pea gravel in the parking lot. These are some pictures of where we are. You can see the work that's been done on the roadway, the irrigation going in, the drainage that has gone in. Just a heads up, we'll be bringing an easement to council probably next week for Beaufort Jasper Water for a line that we're putting in for the project for them to take. These are the forms for the sidewalk. As you can see, it's a very rounded sidewalk. Linda can tell you as well, we've walked those forms quite a bit over the past few weeks. It's a very interesting project. I would not want to have been the one pouring the sidewalks. Here's where they've begun pouring. Again, everything appears to be to standard at this point. The inspectors will do the final walkthrough as soon as they're done. Some more pictures of the sidewalk, as you can see, little complex there with the circles. The trusses are going up on the pavilion. And everything's coming along nicely. Nate, did we ever get them power? Do you know if that was done before he closed the business? We're working with Dominion to get power to the site. It was supposed to have been done Friday. Hopefully, it was supposed to also be done by end of business today. And if not, we'll check on that again. But the biggest update on Southside Park is that we've reached a point where we need to start talking about phase two. We've proceeded with design standards through our indefinite delivery contract with Davis and Floyd and Wooden Partners for design services. They're working on getting us updated cost estimates for what that would look like. But everybody will remember phase two is basically everything outside of the work that's being done now. So it's pretty much the rest of the park. So we expect that the engineering, the designing, and the permitting are going to be more expensive than the designing on the part that we did now, but that the construction can be phased and done in different ways once that design is done. But once we get that, we will bring that forward to council, and we look forward to, again, hopefully proceeding with the same indefinite delivery contract since they've already done so much work out there. Does council have any questions about Southside Park? Yes, sir.
I have one. I know the basketball court is being done by the county, but is there any coordination or conversation on how that's progressing?
The last time I talked to them, they said their projects were on schedule, but I don't have it in front of me as to what that schedule was. And I have not talked to them since Debbie came through.
It's going to be very
So
close.
if for the next time we talk about this, maybe you could have that for us.
Absolutely.
That would be nice.
Yes, sir.
From what I'm hearing, and this is unofficially, it's going to be very close to our completion date, I believe. The basketball court and the additional pickleball courts, they're working on them now. It's under construction.
Any other questions about where we are with Southside Park and what we're looking at going into phase two?
You'll bring all the phase two information to us at a later date.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we met with the design team on Friday afternoon and kind of talked through, what, based on the community input during the initial planning process, we believe the priorities were and what the approach most likely needs to be for that phase two so that they can get us an accurate cost estimate of what we're thinking that's going to look like. That's just for the design part, not the construction. Design and permitting, that's correct, design and permitting. Lots of permits here in the Low Country.
Council, anything else for JJ?
Public
I'll just say quickly, thank you. Thank you to you and Scott for everything that you guys have done to go back to the community and make sure that we're getting feedback and, in line with what the community wants for all of these projects. I know that's not easy and it's a lot of coordination, so thank you for that.
Thank you. And I want to emphasize again that I wouldn't be standing up here in front of you today if it weren't for this team, and the work they've done previously and the work they continue to do. The whole team, Alan's procurement team that technically shouldn't be doing procurement, they're doing that on top of their regular duties, but Linda, Alan, Nate, they're a vast wealth of knowledge. They care about this community. I've worked with a lot of cities and towns. I've come in as a consultant, as an attorney, actually working for the towns, public works, police, fire. And we have an amazing leadership team here. These department heads, they really do care about this community. And I hope this process moving forward will help with, to repair some of the relationships in the community that have not always been great, and to continue to build trust in the city so that we can move forward and not have these issues that come up later in the stage on these projects, that the community wants to be engaged, wants to come to these meetings, wants to be involved, because they know it's not going to be a project that just sits on a shelf. We're going to move forward with it. We're going to have a game plan, and we're going to actually go forward. And again, these are all things that Scott talked to me about in my hiring process before I ever even came on board, and that he has pushed from the top since I got here. You know, this is what we need to see happen. This is what we want to make happen. So I appreciate all of the thanks from the public and council, but this is Scott's leadership from the top and the department heads doing the heavy work. I'm just lucky enough to get to put it all together and present it to you.
We thank you.
I'd
too,
like
JJ.
to, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to say a thank you to Nate and his team for getting the students at USCB safe with the new lighting that you put in. Thank you. That's much appreciated.
So I think I want to add on to that also in the thank you column. I know Nate and his team were out during the storm, you know, making sure that things were as good as they could be. So if you could pass on, I think I mentioned in an email, but you know, now that you're sitting right in front of me, I'll tell you thank you very much. And if you could just pass that on to all who work for you and work with you. For Scott and JJ, you've come and taken a beating many times, but you stayed in the fight. You've been civil in the fight, and surely there have been mistakes made. I think that just comes with doing stuff. You know, we're all trying to do what's best for the city, and it's always easy. You know, I do it to myself all the time, beat myself up by looking back and saying how I could have done it better. That's just natural. But I think the most important thing that I've seen so far, you know, from the council, who we don't always agree on things, to staff, to citizens, you know, we're still talking. And as long as we're still talking in a civil way, I think we'll continue to incrementally make things better.
I'll ditto those comments, and thank you, JJ and staff, for everything that y'all have done, and also to the crew during the tropical storm, Debbie. The planning, the preparation, the execution, all that was fantastic. And we dodged a bullet, folks. We really did. Could have been a lot worse if all that rain fell in one day rather than 3 days. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you. And not to take away from council's closing remarks, but we did not open for public comment after Southside Park. I don't know if anyone has public comment.
No, thank you for that. Yes, anybody? I think people are getting hungry.
Yeah, it's been quite a meeting. I appreciate it. Thank you all for your attention, both the council and the public.
Okay. I guess unless anybody else has anything to say, I'm getting ready to close, but okay, Ms. Merrill, please.
Everybody.
Thank you.
That was Kay Merrill from Pigeon Point Neighborhood saying yay team. Thank you, Kay.
Yeah, and before I adjourn, I just want to mention that there's a Lafayette celebration on March 18th of 2025, and the city of Beaufort's participating in that. They're going to have a procession and all that to celebrate I guess it's the 200th anniversary of Lafayette showing up in Beaufort.
250th.
Not 250th, because he came in,
17,
excuse me, it's 100th, because it was here in 1825. That's correct. Centennial. No, 200 years, that's right. I said 200 first time.
200, yeah.
Winnie.
I didn't do well in math.
That
either.
math thing, y'all have the same thing going.
Not good in math. But anyway, all council is going to be participating in this, and we hope you all will too. It should be a great celebration, and it's been recognized by the Lafayette 200 group, which is a national group, and they've already started this past week in Staten Island, New York, and they're going to work their way down following his trip in 1824 and 25 through the United States. So I wanted to throw that out. And I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting unless there's anything else. We're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. We appreciate your input.